What if the self you cling to, the voice inside your head, the name you carry, the story you've rehearsed, was never truly yours to begin with? Imagine, just for a moment, that every decision, every preference, every tilt of your thoughts was set in motion long before you arrived. You are not a writer of your life, but an actor following a script you never auditioned for. The sensation of being you might be nothing more than a pause between illusions, a fragile flicker mistaken for permanence. Here on the Present Path, we wander into theories that unravel identity itself. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, I invite you to question, were you ever meant to be you, or are you simply occupying a role, borrowed from echoes that came before, destined to dissolve into silence once again? You have always believed that choice defines you, from the smallest gestures, like what shirt to wear in the morning, to the grand declarations, who to love, where to live, what to believe. You've been told that freedom of choice is the foundation of your identity. Yet, beneath this comforting narrative lies a paradox. Every choice you make may not have originated from you at all. The illusion of a chosen self rests on the fragile assumption that decisions arise from an independent center, a you, untouched by outside influence. But what if this center never truly existed? What if the act of choosing is nothing more than a performance written by forces you can't see, rehearsed so convincingly that you mistake it for authenticity? Imagine standing in a crowded market. Your hand drifts toward one piece of fruit instead of another. You feel the satisfaction of deciding, yet invisible layers preceded the gesture. Advertising campaigns, childhood habits, smells in the air, cultural stories, even subtle hunger signals pulsing through your gut. By the time your hand closes around the fruit, the decision was already decided. Neuroscientists like Benjamin Libet revealed in their famous experiments that brain activity predicting a decision can occur up to half a second before conscious awareness. Your self announces the choice only after it has already been made, like a narrator desperately claiming credit for lines written by someone else. This is the first fracture in the illusion of the chosen self, the recognition that your conscious identity might be a latecomer, arriving only after the script is already in motion. And yet, you cling to the story of choice, because without it, what remains? Without the illusion of choosing, the I feels like it begins to dissolve. But let us press further. Think about the name you were given at birth. Did you choose it? Did you choose the language in which you learned to think? Did you select the cultural rules that trained your desires, shaped your fears, and limited your imagination? Before you could even speak, the scaffolding of your identity was built for you by family, society, history. By the time you were capable of forming choices, those choices were already circumscribed by boundaries laid out long before your arrival. And still, you cling to the notion that you are free. There is something hypnotic about this illusion. It comforts you at night, letting you believe that the weight of your life rests in your own hands. But if you step back, if you dare to watch from above, the illusion begins to crack. Imagine yourself as an actor stepping onto a stage. The costume has been chosen, the lighting has been arranged, the lines have been rehearsed, the applause has been anticipated. When you deliver the first word, it feels like it emerges from your own throat, yet every detail has been scripted by 1,000 invisible authors. Your role is to believe you are improvising, because the story collapses if you realize otherwise. The paradox deepens when you reflect on how choices feel. You feel the pressure, the weight, the responsibility. Yet no matter how agonizing the deliberation, the outcome was always going to arrive. Studies on decision-making reveal a startling truth. What feels like open possibility is often a narrowing funnel, invisible forces trimming away options until only one remains. You, standing at the mouth of the funnel, feel like a free agent, but the narrowing occurred outside your awareness. By the time the choice arrives in your hand, it is already inevitable. And so, we return to the self. If choice is not truly yours, what becomes of the one who believes in it? If your chosen path is already written, then the self who claims ownership is a shadow cast on a wall. This shadow feels solid, but its substance is borrowed. It clings to the light of consciousness, not realizing that the light itself is directed by a projector beyond its reach. Pause for a moment. Consider one of your own defining choices. Perhaps the path of study you took, the work you do, the person you love. Did it truly originate from within you? Or did it emerge from the soil of circumstances, chance encounters, societal pressures, even genetic predispositions? The more you trace it back, the more you find yourself dissolving into a web of causes and conditions that extend far beyond the edges of you. What you call a self may simply be the crossroad where countless influences meet and vanish again. This is the haunting truth of the illusion of the chosen self. It is not that you make no choices at all, but that the very mechanism of choice is embedded in a system larger than you, a system you cannot escape. You are the echo of decisions already made, the reflection of causes already unfolding, the afterimage of a process that never consulted you. And yet, here is the paradox. Even as you hear these words, you feel you are choosing to continue. You feel you could stop, turn away, close your eyes. You feel the resistance rising, a defense of your autonomy. That resistance itself is part of the illusion, another thread woven into the script. The illusion works best when you believe you can reject it. So, who are you, if not the one choosing? Perhaps you are simply the awareness watching choices happen. Perhaps you are the silence in which decisions arise and dissolve. Or perhaps you are not even that. Perhaps you are only the story of a self who believes they choose, replayed again and again in the theater of consciousness. The illusion of the chosen self is not cruel. It is necessary. Without it you would collapse under the weight of meaninglessness. With it, you continue, step after step, believing that your hand stretches toward the fruit, that your voice declares your path, that your will is your own. But tonight, as you fall asleep, consider the possibility that you were never the author. You were always the character, and the story of choice was never written by you. Before you were born, before your first breath drew air into your lungs, before your eyes opened to light, there were already echoes waiting for you. These echoes came in many forms: stories told by ancestors, genetic instructions embedded in your cells, cultural myths whispered through centuries, and even the unspoken hopes or fears of your parents. You did not arrive into silence. You arrived into a chamber already humming, a resonance chamber of history and biology, carrying vibrations that would shape you before you could ever shape yourself. Think about the rhythm of a heartbeat in the womb. That steady, pulsing beat was your first exposure to rhythm, the first pattern your nervous system learned to recognize. You did not choose this rhythm. It was given to you. In that way, your body learned patterns of comfort and safety long before you had the concept of I. This prenatal world was already inscribing itself upon you. The echoes stretched even further back. The shape of your body, the color of your eyes, the wiring of your brain, all of these were designed by codes written across generations. Your hunger, your reflexes, even your threshold for fear, carry traces of lives you will never meet. Evolution wrote notes on your nervous system, preparing you for environments that may no longer exist, leaving you tuned for forests, predators, and seasons long gone. When you feel a sudden surge of adrenaline in a quiet modern street, that is not you. That is an echo of survival mechanisms millions of years old. But there are cultural echoes too. The language you would eventually speak was spoken by thousands before you. Its words shaped their thoughts, their loves, their laws. And when you opened your mouth to speak, those same syllables came tumbling out. They felt like yours, but they were borrowed. The voice you call your own is an echo chamber of past tongues. Even your name, the label you identify with most intimately, is a recycled word chosen from traditions older than you. Your identity began not with invention, but with inheritance. Pause and ask yourself, can you find a moment in your life untouched by these echoes? When you laughed as a child, wasn't the rhythm of laughter something copied, something taught? When you reached for comfort, weren't you repeating a gesture seen countless times before? Even rebellion, even the act of trying to be different, is shaped by the very structures you resist. The echo is so pervasive that there is no outside of it. This realization unsettles you. You want to believe in originality, in a core untouched by the past, but every attempt to peel back the layers reveals more echoes, more voices, more borrowed fragments. You are not a blank page. You are a palimpsest, layers of writing upon writing, words from other hands faintly erased, yet still visible beneath the surface. The story of you is written over the stories of countless others, yet never fully replaces them. Consider dreams for a moment. When you dream, the faces, the places, the languages often feel familiar, but you did not consciously select them. They are fragments echoing from experiences, stories and sensations you once absorbed. Some dreams even carry images you cannot trace, archetypes, symbols, fears that feel ancient. Carl Jung called these the collective unconscious, echoes from humanity itself, reverberating in every sleeping mind. Your dream self, too, is not fully yours. It is a chorus of echoes speaking through you. And yet, in waking life, you still insist on I. You still wake up and declare ownership of your decisions, your thoughts, your body. But those thoughts are recycled, those decisions are influenced, and that body is sculpted from genetic and environmental echoes. You were never meant to be a solitary entity. You were meant to be a continuation, an overlapping resonance of what came before. Imagine yourself standing in a cathedral. The sound of your voice bounces against stone walls, returning to you multiplied, distorted, enriched. The echo is inseparable from the voice itself. This is your existence. Every action you take reverberates with histories and causes you cannot fully hear. The sense of individuality is the voice. The sense of destiny is the echo, and together they create the illusion of a stable self. But what happens when you lean closer to the echo? What happens when you realize your laughter, your tears, your very heartbeat are not original notes but recurring refrains? Perhaps you feel unease, perhaps a soft grief. But there is also wonder here. You are not alone in your existence. You are a gathering of voices, a weaving of threads spun long before you. Your consciousness is not isolated. It is a chorus. This chorus suggests something profound. Maybe you were never meant to be you in isolation. Maybe the very idea of a single self-contained identity is the illusion. You were always a resonance, always an echo carrying other echoes forward. And just as the cathedral dissolves the separation between voice and chamber, existence dissolves the separation between you and the histories within you. So, as you drift deeper into this exploration tonight, let yourself listen more closely. Beneath your daily thoughts, beneath your surface feelings, there are older vibrations, ancestral fears, cultural myths, biological patterns, ancient rhythms. They hum in your silence, and they guide your steps. Whether you realize it or not, every move you make is choreographed by echoes before existence, and the self you cling to is only the illusion of being the first to dance. From the moment you first opened your eyes, others began writing you. Your parents chose the words you would hear first, the tone of their voices shaping what felt safe and what felt threatening. Teachers corrected your speech, rewarded your obedience, punished your resistance. Friends mirrored pieces of you, reflecting back images that became your identity. And society at large whispered constantly, telling you what beauty is, what success looks like, what dreams are worth pursuing. If you pause and trace the outline of your life, you will see that the pen has rarely been in your hand. Yourself is a manuscript written by others, passed down like a script you never agreed to perform. Consider your earliest memories. Perhaps you recall being told you were a good child, or a difficult one. That label was not chosen. It was assigned. But slowly, you began to embody it. If you were praised for being quiet, you learned to keep your voice contained. If you were scolded for being restless, you absorbed the shame of movement. Every word spoken about you became an annotation in the book of your identity. You didn't write those first chapters. Others did, and you performed them as if they were your own. Psychologists call this social conditioning, but the truth feels more haunting. You have been authored. Your laughter has been punctuated by expectations. Your silences have been filled with meanings imposed from outside. Even rebellion, the act of pushing back against what others wanted, is still a response to their writing. You cannot escape the text because the act of resisting it only underlines it more deeply. Think of how you speak. The language you use, the metaphors you lean on, the idioms that slip from your tongue. None of these were invented by you. They were given, inherited, and rehearsed. And yet, you feel they belong to you. When you write a sentence, you believe it is yours. But in truth, you are rearranging letters from a set carved by history. Your voice is a remix of countless others, and your sense of originality is a convincing mirage. This extends further into the very structure of your mind. Social psychologists like George Herbert Mead described the looking-glass self, the idea that you form your identity by seeing yourself reflected in others' reactions. When you smile and someone smiles back, you feel validated. When your joke falls flat, you feel embarrassed. Your sense of who you are grows not in isolation, but in mirrors held up by others. Without these mirrors, identity dissolves. You were written into being by reflection, not by independent authorship. Pause for a moment and reflect on your dreams as a child. Did you dream of becoming a teacher, a doctor, an astronaut? Were those dreams born entirely from your heart, or were they offered to you by stories, television shows, adults repeating what mattered in their world? Even your imagination has been ghost-written. The possibilities you think of as yours were handed to you by culture. The book of self has margins filled with notes from authors you will never meet. But here lies the paradox. You feel resistance to this realization. You want to protest. I am more than others writing. I have chosen differently. I have broken free. And yes, there are moments where you diverged. Moments where you refused a line or altered a chapter. But even those acts of rebellion arose in response to the script you were given. A character might improvise, but the stage, the language, the audience, all still belong to someone else. Consider the weight of names again. You were given one, and with it came expectations, meanings, even stereotypes. If you have ever been judged before you spoke, it was because of the name on your face, the label on your introduction. You did not choose this, yet it shaped countless encounters. A name is not just a word. It is a binding line written in the story of self, one you cannot erase without rewriting every interaction that followed. Think too about shame. The things you feel ashamed of are rarely born from within. They are learned from others, absorbed, like ink stains. A culture says, this is acceptable, that is shameful, and you carry those instructions in silence, mistaking them for your own conscience. But when you peel them back, they are just marks left by unseen pens. So where, then, is the you? If every word, every gesture, every desire has been scripted by others, what remains? Perhaps there is a blank page somewhere deep inside, untouched and pure, or perhaps there never was. Perhaps the self is not an author, but a collection of edits, scribbles, and margins filled in by countless hands. And here is the quiet irony. You, listening to these words now, are being written still. As you let these sentences flow into your mind, they become part of you. My voice enters your story, shaping it in ways you may not notice. You believe you are the one listening, but in listening you are being altered. You are being written again, line by line, word by word. This realization can feel heavy, but it can also feel liberating. If you are written by others, then perhaps you are not a fixed identity at all. Perhaps you are a text in constant revision, a draft that never finishes, and maybe that means you are not trapped in the story you were given. Maybe you can begin to write differently. Not alone, not from nothing, but in collaboration with the echoes and the authors that surround you. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, notice the voices that have written you. Hear their echoes in your thoughts. Feel their presence in your emotions. And then, gently ask yourself, if the self is written by others, who is it that turns the page? Every story has a beginning at least. That is what we are taught to believe. Your life too feels like it must have an origin. A single point where identity first appeared, the spark that ignited the flame of you. Yet when you search for it, the beginning of the self slips through your hands. Identity does not arise from a clean starting line. It unravels from countless threads that stretch endlessly backward, leaving no true origin to point toward. What you call yourself may only be a knot tied in the middle of a rope that existed long before you touched it. Ask yourself, where did your identity truly begin? Was it in the womb, when cells multiplied according to ancient codes? Was it the first moment of memory, when images began to stick? Or was it when others spoke your name, calling you into being with sound? Each answer feels plausible, but each collapses under closer inspection. The womb was filled with influences you did not choose. Early memories are unreliable, reshaped by later experiences, and names themselves are borrowed, chosen by others. Each supposed beginning reveals itself as another continuation. This is why philosophers speak of the self as a process, not a thing. Identity is not a monument erected at a single time. It is a river with no source you can see. Trace it backward, and it disperses into countless streams, genetic inheritances, historical moments, cultural narratives, cosmic chants. There is no origin, only confluence, and yet you cling to the idea of a beginning because without it, the self feels unstable. Without an origin, identity feels rootless, as if it might dissolve into nothing. Consider memory again. You remember being a child, perhaps holding a toy, or sitting in a classroom, or hearing a lullaby. You believe those moments are proof of your origin. But memory is not a recording. It is a reconstruction, rewritten each time you recall it. Neuroscientists have shown that memory is plastic, malleable, prone to distortion. What you remember as the start of your identity may be nothing more than a fiction polished by repetition. The origin you seek may be a story invented by your brain to hold together the fragments. The paradox intensifies when you look at biology. Your body is constantly changing. cells dying, regenerating, renewing. The skin you have today was not the skin you had 7 years ago. The atoms in your body are recycled from food, water, air. You are literally composed of matter that once belonged to stars, trees, animals, strangers. How can identity have a singular origin if the very matter that composes you never belonged solely to you? You are a collage of borrowed elements, stitched together temporarily. Now imagine identity as a mirror shattering into pieces. Each shard reflects a fragment. Family expectations, cultural traditions, genetic patterns, personal experiences. You pick up one shard and believe it is the origin, but it is only a piece. When you gather them together, they form a shape that looks like you, but the pieces never originated from you alone. Identity without origin means that what you see in the mirror is not a self-born essence, but a patchwork reflection. There is a haunting comfort in this. If identity has no true origin, then perhaps you are not bound to a fixed past. You are not chained to a single moment that defines you forever. Instead, you are fluid, continually rewritten, endlessly reshaped. The absence of origin is not emptiness. It is possibility. It means the self can be revised without betraying an essence, because there was never an essence to begin with. And yet, there is also unease. Without an origin, the self feels unstable, fragile. If you are not rooted in a beginning, then what prevents you from vanishing? This is where the illusion of permanence enters. You construct stories about your childhood, your heritage, your memories, to give the impression of continuity. You believe in a beginning because beginnings anchor identity. But these anchors are illusions, necessary fictions to steady the drifting ship of self. Consider the way you introduce yourself to others. You give your name, perhaps your job, your hometown. These are treated as origins, as fixed points that define you. But peel them back, and each unravels. Your hometown was chosen by your parents. Your job was influenced by chance encounters. Even your name was selected by someone else. What feels like origin is really inheritance. What feels like foundation is really scaffolding erected by others. Philosophers like David Hume went so far as to argue that when you search within, you never find a true self at all, only a bundle of perceptions, endlessly shifting. The origin vanishes because there was never a solid core. Identity is not a flame lit once and carried forever. It is a flicker that constantly reignites moment by moment. So what does it mean to live with an identity without origin? Perhaps it means surrendering the need for beginnings. Perhaps it means accepting that you are less a thing and more a process, less a monument and more a wave. Perhaps it means that the comfort of I does not come from tracing a route, but from inhabiting the constant unfolding. As you drift into sleep, hold this paradox gently. You were never meant to be a self with a single origin. You were always meant to be a constellation of echoes, threads and fragments woven together. And when you try to find the first spark of who you are, remember, there is no spark. There is only the fire that keeps burning, fed by countless unseen flames. When you think of yourself, you think of the light, the achievements, the qualities you are proud of, the story you present to others. But just as a shadow cannot exist without light, neither can identity exist without its darker outlines. What you call you is shaped as much by what you hide, deny, or ignore, as it is by what you embrace. The paradox of the self is that it is not built solely from presence, but from absence. Shadows define you, often more powerfully than the qualities you claim as your own. Consider shame for a moment. The things you push away, the impulses you bury, the failures you refuse to acknowledge, these are shadows trailing behind you. You may not speak of them, but they carve your choices silently. If you fear rejection, that fear directs you towards safe paths, shaping your life even more than ambition does. If you fear vulnerability, your silence builds walls around you, becoming as much a part of your identity as your words. The self is not just what stands in the light, it is also what crouches in the dark. Carl Jung called this the shadow archetype, the hidden aspects of the psyche that the conscious mind denies. But these denied aspects do not disappear. They press against the edges of awareness, shaping behavior from below. Every judgment you make of others often reveals a shadow within yourself. When you criticize, when you recoil, when you secretly envy, it is the shadow speaking. You are defined not only by what you show but by what you reject. The self is a tapestry woven from both threads of light and strands of shadow. This is why you can never fully escape your hidden self. Even in moments of triumph, shadows whisper beneath the applause. Even in moments of intimacy, Shadows linger at the edges of connection. Your choices, your words, your very desires are sculpted by the unseen weight of what you refuse to face. The paradox of identity is that you are inseparable from what you wish you were not. Pause for a moment. Let me ask you something. Where are you right now, in this moment, listening to these words? And what time is it for you as you hear them? This question may seem simple, but notice how the shadows answer too. Perhaps you are alone in your room. Perhaps lying in bed in the quiet dark. Perhaps in a place where you do not want to be. Your surroundings are shaping you now, even silently. The shadows of your location, the time of day, the unspoken feelings around you, these too are part of the self being written at this very moment. Think of the roles you play in life. You may be confident in one setting, hesitant in another. You may be kind with strangers, impatient with those closest to you. The light changes, and so do the shadows. Identity is not fixed because shadows shift with every angle of illumination. You are not a single consistent figure. You are a shape forever redrawn by the dance between light and dark. And yet, the self clings to wholeness. You want to believe that you are one person, stable and unified. But the more you examine your shadows, the more you realize the unity is an illusion. You are contradictions stitched together. You are generosity and envy. You are courage and fear. You are honesty and secrecy. And it is not the light alone that defines you. It is the interplay. Without shadow, light is blinding. Without light, shadow is invisible. Together they carve the figure you call me. Imagine yourself standing under a single lamp. Behind you, your shadow stretches endlessly, larger than you, darker than you, following every step. No matter how fast you move, it is always there. This is your life. Your shadow is not an enemy. It is a companion. It is not your opposite. It is your outline. But here lies the paradox. You cannot see your own shadow fully. You turn, and it shifts. You chase, and it escapes. Others may glimpse it more clearly than you do, just as you glimpse theirs. This means part of your identity will always remain hidden to you, defined not by self-knowledge, but by what you cannot bear to confront. You are incomplete, not because something is missing, but because something is always obscured. To embrace this is unsettling, but also liberating. If shadows define you, then you are not trapped in the story of your conscious self. You are larger than the light you claim. You contain multitudes, contradictions, unseen depths. You are more than the person you present to the world, and more than the person you believe yourself to be. So as you listen tonight, notice the shadows that define you, the silences in your conversations, the hesitations in your choices, the fears that shape your comfort. They are not enemies. They are architects. They draw the lines of your identity, just as surely as your achievements do. And perhaps, in the quiet, you can learn to turn toward them, not to erase them, but to understand that you were never meant to be only the light. You were always meant to be the shadow as well. Dreams arrive like intruders, slipping into the silence of night, carrying faces, voices, and places you did not invite. Sometimes they are fragments of memory. Sometimes they are impossible scenes that dissolve with the morning light. And yet, within these drifting illusions lies a haunting question. Are your dreams only stories spun by the brain, or are they echoes of selves you have forgotten? Each dream self walks with conviction, believing it is real, though you abandon it upon waking. But what if the you in dreams is no less valid than the you that now listens? What if every dream is a rehearsal of forgotten identities, discarded as if they never mattered? Think back to your most vivid dreams. Perhaps you were running through a city you've never visited, or speaking in a language you do not know, or feeling emotions that seemed foreign, and yet strangely yours. Where did these selves come from? They feel like inventions, yet they are made of familiar textures, bits of memory, pieces of longing, fragments of fear. Neuroscientists argue that dreams are the brain's way of reorganizing, stitching fragments together into temporary narratives. But the effect is undeniable. Each dream offers you another self, one you inhabit so fully that you forget the waking world exists. For those minutes or hours, that self is you. Now consider how easily you abandon it. You wake, and the dream dissolves. You rarely mourn the loss of the dream self. You rarely pause to acknowledge that a version of you just lived, suffered, and vanished. How many of these selves have you forgotten? Hundreds, thousands. Each one was real in its own moment, as convinced of existence as you are now, but all of them are erased, their stories cut short. You are a graveyard of forgotten selves. This idea unsettles, because it suggests your identity is not singular but plural. You are not one continuous self, but countless selves flashing into being and vanishing again. Waking life feels like the real one, only because it persists longer. But persistence does not prove authenticity. If a dream self feels as real while it exists, who are you to claim that your waking self has more authority? The boundary between dream and waking dissolves when you realize both are experiences constructed within consciousness. Philosophers and mystics have long suggested that waking life may itself be a dream, more coherent, more stable, but still fleeting. If your nightly selves are forgotten upon waking, perhaps your waking self will one day be forgotten upon death, just another echo fading into silence. The self you cling to now may be no more permanent than the dream self you abandoned this morning. And here lies the paradox. The selves you forget shape you nonetheless. Dreams leave traces, images, feelings, even subtle changes in mood. You wake with unease after a nightmare, with warmth after a dream of love, with confusion after a dream of strangeness. The forgotten selves live on in residue, shaping your waking life without being remembered. You are haunted by echoes you cannot name. Pause here. Think of a dream you once had that still lingers in fragments. Perhaps it was years ago, yet an image remains: a hallway, a stranger, a falling sensation. That fragment is not random. It is a shard of a forgotten self embedded within you. It shaped how you felt the next day, how you moved, how you saw the world. You live with countless such fragments. Forgotten selves do not vanish. They disperse into the current of identity, coloring it invisibly. Even waking memories resemble dreams when examined closely. Neuroscience shows that memory is not stable. It shifts, edits, erases. Your recollection of childhood may be no more accurate than your memory of last night's dream. Both are reconstructions, fragile and malleable, which means the selves you once were, even in waking life, are also forgotten, rewritten, replaced. You are not one self carried forward. You are a succession of forgotten selves, strung together by the illusion of continuity. Imagine standing in a hall of mirrors. Each reflection shows you in a slightly different form. Some look familiar, others distorted, others unrecognizable. Every night you step into a new reflection, becoming someone else for a time. In the morning, the mirror shatters, leaving only fragments behind. This cycle has been happening your entire life, and yet you tell yourself the lie of unity, that there is only one you, stretching across time. The truth is stranger. You are an endless series of selves, each forgotten by the next. What does this mean for the identity you hold so tightly? Perhaps it means that continuity is not real. Perhaps the I is a story told upon waking, a narrator stitching together fragments of forgotten selves into a single thread. But if that story is an illusion, then who are you, really? Are you the waking self, the dream self? Or are you the silence in which both arise and dissolve? As you drift tonight, notice the selves you inhabit even now. The version of you listening to these words is not the same self that walked earlier today. It is not the same self that will wake tomorrow. Each moment, a self arises, lives briefly, and vanishes. Most will be forgotten. But together, they form the illusion of a single, continuous you. And perhaps that is all identity ever was. A dream of permanence, told by forgotten selves whispering in the dark. You like to believe that your thoughts are spontaneous, that your inner voice speaks freely, unbound by any script. But if you lean closer, if you listen carefully, you will hear the faint rustle of paper behind every word, the invisible lines already written for you. Your mind does not improvise as much as it rehearses. Each thought you think, each feeling you entertain, each belief you defend, these are scripts running silently behind the curtain, guiding you long before you recognize their presence. Consider language. The very structure of your thoughts is tied to the grammar and vocabulary you inherited. When you think in words, you are not inventing language, you are borrowing it. The words themselves come with histories, meanings, and assumptions that shape the possibilities of your thought. For example, some languages divide time into past, present, and future, while others view time as circular. The language you use does not just describe reality, it scripts how you experience it. What feels like your original thought is often the echo of a script embedded in the very tools of thought itself. Scripts go deeper still. Think of social rituals, how you greet someone, how you smile in photographs, how you shake hands or bow. These are rehearsed patterns learned long before you understood them. You follow them without conscious effort, not because you choose them in each moment, but because they were scripted into your nervous system through repetition. The script of politeness, of etiquette, of performance, weaving itself into your identity until you mistake it for authenticity. Pause and consider your desires. Why do you want what you want? Did you write those longings yourself, or were they written for you by advertising, by stories, by cultural ideals? When you long for success, you are following a script centuries in the making. When you crave beauty, you are responding to lines whispered by fashion, media, even ancient survival instincts. Desire feels personal, but behind it lies a script directing the stage. The mind performs, convinced of its originality, while the script remains hidden. Neuroscientists studying decision-making have discovered something unsettling. Often the brain decides before consciousness catches up. In Libet's experiments, brain activity predicted the choice to act milliseconds before participants reported making the decision. Consciousness does not write the script. It reads it aloud afterward, taking credit for what was already unfolding. This means the you identify with may be less a creator and more a narrator, speaking lines that were written backstage. Imagine sitting in a theater, watching a play. You know the actors are following a script, yet their performances feel alive, spontaneous, convincing. This is your mind. Your identity is the actor, speaking lines written by forces unseen, genetics, environment, memory, habit. And like the audience, you suspend disbelief, convinced that the performance is real. You applaud yourself for improvising, when in truth you are following stage directions whispered by the unseen playwrights of existence. But who are these playwrights? Some are obvious: family, teachers, culture. Others are subtler: biological drives, unconscious patterns, collective myths. Each layer adds another page to the script. You did not choose your reflex to flinch at loud noises, nor your attraction to certain faces, nor your tendency to repeat phrases you've heard. These scripts run silently, yet they govern much of your life. What you call instinct is often a rehearsed line. What you call intuition is a whisper from scripts you cannot see. This does not mean you are a puppet, helplessly bound. It means you are a character, inhabiting lines that shift depending on the scene. Sometimes you improvise, bending the script into new directions, but even improvisation happens within constraints. The stage, the props, the language, they set the boundaries of possibility. Freedom exists, but it is a freedom shaped by scripts already written. The paradox here is sharp. If the self is scripted, then where is authenticity? Perhaps authenticity does not mean inventing from nothing. Perhaps it means becoming aware of the scripts and choosing how to inhabit them. Just as an actor can perform the same lines with subtle differences, you too can infuse your lines with awareness, with presence. You may not escape the script, but you can decide how to deliver it. Consider how memory plays into this. When you recall a past event, you think you are reliving truth. But memory is not a recording. It is a reconstruction, revised each time it is recalled. In essence, memory is a script rewritten again and again, shaped by new contexts, new interpretations. The self you remember may never have existed as you recall it. Each recollection is another performance, another revision of the same play, and yet you treat it as truth. Dreams, too, are scripts behind the mind. They borrow settings, characters, emotions, weaving them into surreal plays where logic collapses but feeling remains strong. You do not choose your dreams, yet they feel deeply personal. They reveal scripts you didn't know you were carrying. The unspoken fears, the hidden desires, the unresolved conflicts. Even as you sleep, the theater of your mind never closes. The scripts keep running, rehearsing, performing. So who are you really, if not the author? Perhaps you are the stage on which scripts play out. Perhaps you are the voice that gives them sound, the awareness that watches them unfold. Or perhaps you are nothing more than the story that emerges when all the scripts overlap, a character mistaking itself for a writer. As you listen tonight, feel the scripts moving within you. Notice the words that rise in your mind, the habits that guide your body, the desires that tug at your choices. They are not random. They are lines written long before this moment. And yet, here you are, believing in your performance. Perhaps that belief is the most convincing script of all, the one that says, I am me, I am free, I am the author. But maybe, just maybe, you were never meant to be the writer. You were always meant to be the performance. Every day you wear a mask. You might not notice it, but it's there, shaped by expectation, polished by habit, reinforced by fear and desire. When you walk into a room, when you greet someone, when you speak about yourself, you are presenting a version that feels real yet is not your entire truth. The mask becomes so convincing that you forget it is a mask at all. But behind it, behind every smile, every posture, every introduction, there is no singular face waiting to be revealed. There is only another mask, and another, until at the deepest level, you find not a core identity, but an absence, a silence, a space too vast to define. Think about how you behave differently, depending on where you are. At work, you might project competence and control. With friends, you let yourself soften, maybe laugh too loudly. With family, old habits return. You become childlike again, even if you are grown. Each role is a mask, shaped for the moment. None of them are false, yet none of them are fully you. The paradox is that the mask is both performance and truth. It conceals, and yet it also defines. Without the mask, interaction collapses. Sociologists describe this as dramaturgy, life as theater. Irving Goffman argued that we are all actors, managing impressions, performing roles, adjusting scripts. The self is not a stable essence, but a performance sustained by masks. You believe in the face behind the mask, but perhaps there is no face at all, only layers of performance, endlessly shifting depending on the stage. Consider social media. Every photo you post, every update you share, is a mask curated for an imagined audience. You choose angles, captions, filters, each one shaping how others see you. Over time, the mask begins to shape how you see yourself. You scroll through your own images and believe they reflect reality, when in truth they are fragments, polished and partial. The mask becomes the memory, erasing the raw face beneath. But what is beneath? When you strip away the roles, the masks, the curated performances, what do you find? Many search for an authentic core, a true self untouched by performance. Yet, when they look deeply, they discover only another layer, another construction. The Buddhist tradition calls this anatta, no self. The idea that behind all appearances, behind every mask, there is no permanent identity waiting. The self is a mask without a face. It is appearance all the way down. Pause and reflect on your own life. How many times have you said, "This is who I really am," only to change later? Perhaps you once identified with rebellion, then later with responsibility. Perhaps you once called yourself shy, then learned to be bold. Each mask felt authentic in its moment, yet each was temporary. The self is not one face but many, and each face fades with time. Even the body itself is a mask. Your expressions, your gestures, your clothing, all shape how others perceive you. Yet the body changes constantly, aging, shifting, dissolving. The mask of youth falls away. The mask of strength softens. What remains is another mask, and another. The face you present today will not be the face remembered tomorrow. The body is performance too, constantly rewriting itself. This realization can feel unsettling, as if you are hollow inside, as if there is no anchor to cling to. But it can also be freeing. If the self is only masks, then you are not trapped in a single identity. You are fluid, able to shift, to reinvent. You are not bound to a permanent essence. You are a dancer changing costumes, endlessly creating new appearances. The absence of a fixed face is the possibility of infinite masks. And yet, there is danger too. When you forget the mask is a mask, you cling to it, defend it, suffer when it cracks. You fear being seen without it, even though there is no final face beneath. This is why exposure feels terrifying, because you believe someone might see the real you, when in truth there is no real self hiding. There are only performances, shifting shadows, illusions mistaken for substance. Philosophers like Nietzsche spoke of masks, not as lies but as necessary tools of life. A mask allows you to move in the world, to interact, to belong. Without masks, existence would be unbearable. But when you mistake the mask for a face, you suffer. When you realize it is a mask, you gain freedom. You can choose how to perform, how to shape identity, how to let go. Imagine a carnival. Everyone wears masks, some ornate, some simple, some terrifying. The music plays, and the dancers move, believing in their roles. You join, wearing your own mask, forgetting it is not your skin. The dance continues until the night ends, and the masks are set aside. Yet even then, no one sees a final face. They see only another mask, another role, another layer of performance. This is your life, a carnival of masks, none of which reveal a final truth. So tonight, as you drift deeper, notice the mask you are wearing now. Perhaps it is the mask of the listener, quiet and reflective. Perhaps it is the mask of the thinker, analyzing what these words mean. Know that this mask too is temporary, soon to dissolve, and behind it lies not a single face, but the silence of absence, the truth that you were never meant to be one stable self at all. You were always meant to be a mask without a face. You like to believe that your past belongs to you, that the memories you carry, the stories you tell, the events you survived are uniquely yours, etched into the fabric of your identity. But if you examine closely, you will discover that much of what you call your past was never truly yours to begin with. You inherited fragments from others, family narratives, cultural myths, even borrowed memories repeated so often, they became your own. Your past is not a pure possession, it is a tapestry woven with threads you did not choose. Think of the family stories told around you as a child. Perhaps you heard about the struggles of your grandparents, or the sacrifices of your parents, or events that happened before you were born. These stories seeped into your consciousness, shaping your sense of who you are. You felt pride in victories you never fought for, shame in mistakes you never made, nostalgia for eras you never lived. Their past became part of your past. The line between what you lived and what you inherited blurred, until you could no longer tell the difference. Even your earliest memories are not fully yours. Psychologists have shown that childhood memories are fragile, easily reshaped by suggestion. A parent's retelling of an event often becomes more vivid than the event itself. Over time you remember the story, not the experience. The past you claim is a reconstruction authored by others. It feels authentic, but it is a narrative stitched together from fragments, repeated until it hardens into truth. Consider also the way culture provides you with a collective past. National histories, religious traditions, cultural myths. These are handed to you as if they were yours. You feel the weight of pride, loyalty, or grief toward events that occurred centuries ago. Wars you never fought, victories you never earned, tragedies you never endured. Yet they shape your emotions, your choices, your identity. The past of strangers becomes entangled with your sense of self. You carry it as if it belongs to you. This is why identity feels so heavy. You are not only bearing your own experiences, you are carrying inherited memories, collective narratives, ancestral echoes. When you say, "I am who I am because of my past," you are speaking of a past that is not truly yours alone. You are speaking of a past written by countless others. Pause and think of a photograph from your childhood. Perhaps you have seen it so many times that you remember the scene clearly. The clothes, the colors, the expressions. Yet, if you are honest, do you remember the event itself, or do you remember the photograph? The image becomes the memory, replacing the lived moment. Your past has been overwritten by representations, by echoes. What you believe to be yours is a borrowed reconstruction. Even trauma, which feels so deeply personal, is shaped by narratives outside of you. The way you interpret pain, the meaning you give it, the way you tell it to others, these are influenced by cultural scripts. Two people may endure similar events, but carry very different pasts because of the stories available to them. Trauma too is rewritten by the hands of others, reframed and retold until it no longer belongs solely to the one who endured it. Neuroscience deepens the paradox. Memory is not a static record, but a process of continual rewriting. Each time you recall the past, your brain alters it slightly, weaving in new details, discarding others. Over time, the memory you cherish may be unrecognizable from the original event. This means your past is not only shared with others, it is also unstable within you. The you who remembers is constantly editing, erasing, replacing. Your past is a palimpsest, a text written over so many times that the original words are lost. So what remains of authenticity? If your past is borrowed, rewritten, unstable, what is truly yours? Perhaps the answer is unsettling, nothing. Or perhaps the answer is liberating, everything. Because if your past is not a fixed possession, then you are not bound to it. You can release the weight of believing you must carry it forever. You can see yourself not as the prisoner of a past, but as the canvas upon which countless pasts are painted. Imagine a library filled with books. Some are written by your ancestors, some by your culture, some by strangers you will never know. When you walk through this library, you pick up fragments, phrases, images, stories, and weave them into your own. Over time, you believe the library belongs to you, but the books were always shared, always borrowed. Your past is not your private volume, it is a library of echoes, and you are only one of many readers. This realization changes how you see others too. Just as you carry pasts that are not yours, so do they. The anger of a friend may be an echo of generational wounds. The fear of a stranger may be an inheritance from cultural trauma. No one carries only their own past. Everyone is entangled in histories they did not live, yet must bear. To see this is to soften, to recognize that much of what you resist in others is not theirs alone, but part of the collective echo you share. So tonight, as you listen, think of the past you claim. Which pieces are truly yours? Which are inherited, borrowed, rewritten? Can you find the boundary? Or do you see now that the boundary dissolves, that your past is a chorus of voices, a patchwork of echoes, a story that never belonged to you alone? Perhaps that is the deeper truth. You were never meant to own a singular past. You were always meant to carry fragments of others, to dissolve into the shared history of being. There are moments in life when you notice a pause, a gap, a silence so subtle that it almost slips past you. It comes after an old version of you has ended, but before a new one begins. These pauses reveal something unsettling between oneself and the next. There is emptiness. You are not continuous. You are a series of selves stitched together by silences, and in those silences lies the haunting truth. You are not what you believe yourself to be. Think of transitions. The moment you move from child to adolescent, from student to worker, from single to partnered, from healthy to ill, there is always a silence, a liminal space where the old self no longer fits, but the new self has not yet taken shape. In these spaces you feel disoriented, as if floating. That silence is where identity falters, where you see how fragile the illusion of continuity really is. Psychologists describe identity as narrative, a story you tell yourself to create coherence. But stories require transitions, bridges between events. Without those bridges, the narrative collapses. The silence between two selves is the moment when no bridge exists, when the old chapter has closed, but the next one has not been written. In those moments, you glimpse the truth that there is no stable narrator, only silence, desperately filled with words after the fact. Pause and reflect on your own life. Can you recall a time when you felt you no longer recognized yourself? Perhaps after a loss, or a move, or a sudden change, you felt like a stranger in your own body, uncertain of how to speak, how to act, how to be. That was the silence between selves, the empty space where one identity dissolves and another has yet to coalesce. You tell yourself the story of smooth transition, but in truth, there was a gap. You were no one in that moment, suspended between roles. Even in smaller shifts, silence lingers. Consider waking from sleep. For a brief instant before memory floods back, you do not know who you are, where you are, what your life is. That split second of blankness is a glimpse of existence without identity. Then the script returns, filling in the silence with the story of me. But the silence was there waiting, reminding you that identity is not as seamless as it seems. Philosophy too has explored these gaps. Existentialists spoke of nothingness at the core of being, the void from which identity emerges. Buddhists describe the gaps between thoughts, the spaces where no self exists, only awareness. These traditions remind us that silence is not just absence. It is a window. It reveals the truth that the self is constructed, temporary, contingent. Without silence, you might believe too fully in your continuity. With silence, you see the fractures. The paradox is this. You spend your life trying to avoid these silences. You fill them with distraction, with noise, with certainty. When a chapter ends, you rush to begin the next. When identity cracks, you scramble to repair it. But in doing so, you miss the revelation. The silence between selves is the moment of truth, the moment that shows you were never as solid as you imagined. The self is not a straight line, it is a series of fragments, with silence woven in between. Imagine standing in a dark hallway, between two doors. One door closes behind you, the other has not yet opened. In the hallway, you feel unease. Who are you without the room behind or the room ahead? You are no one. You are only presence, stripped of context. That hallway is the silence between selves, and you walk through it many times without noticing. Each time you emerge changed, wearing a new mask, carrying a new script. But the hallway itself, silent, empty, remains constant. Even language hints at this truth. The pause between breaths, the silence between words. Without them, speech would collapse into noise. Identity is the same. Without silence, without breaks, the performance of self would collapse into chaos. The gaps give shape to the story, even as they reveal its fragility. The silence between selves is not a flaw. It is the structure that makes the illusion possible. But what if you lingered there? What if, instead of rushing to fill the gap, you stayed in the silence? Perhaps you would discover that there is no true self waiting, no final face beneath the masks. Perhaps you would realize that identity is not the solid foundation you thought, but a series of appearances arising and dissolving. The silence does not conceal a deeper truth. It reveals the absence of one. This recognition can be terrifying. It can feel like death, like erasure, but it can also be freeing. If you are not bound to oneself, if you are always dissolving and reforming, then you are not trapped. You are fluid, like water flowing through shapes without clinging. The silence between selves is not a void to fear. It is a doorway to possibility. So tonight, as you listen, notice the silences in your own story. Notice the gaps between roles, the pauses between thoughts, the blankness between dreams and waking. They are not interruptions. They are revelations. They show you that the self is not a solid structure, but a fragile performance, stitched together by silence. And perhaps, if you lean into the silence, you will glimpse the truth. You were never meant to be one continuous self. You were always meant to vanish and reappear, again and again between two silences. You often define yourself by the choices you made, by the path you followed, but there is another dimension of identity that lingers quietly in the background, the paths you never walked. Each decision, no matter how small, closes off countless other possibilities. Every yes erases 1,000 potential no's. Every step forward leaves behind an entire landscape of lives that could have been yours, and yet though you never lived them, these unwritten paths still shape who you believe yourself to be. Think of a single moment, a choice of school, a job accepted, a relationship pursued. At the time, it may have seemed like just one decision among many, but that single choice created a trajectory, a chain of consequences that define your life today. More hauntingly, it erased all the lives you might have lived otherwise. Perhaps you could have lived in another country, spoken another language, held another name. Perhaps you would have been a stranger to yourself, someone unrecognizable. These unlived lives linger like ghosts, pressing against the edges of your identity. Psychologists speak of counterfactual thinking, the mind's tendency to imagine what might have been. You replay events, altering small details, envisioning alternate outcomes. Sometimes this brings regret, sometimes relief. But either way, the imagined path influences how you feel about the path you did take. If you succeed, you imagine the failures you avoided. If you fail, you imagine the successes you lost. Identity is not just shaped by what happened, but by the shadows of what didn't. Pause and reflect. How many times have you told yourself, if only I had done this instead? Those imagined versions of you feel vivid, almost real. You picture the job you might have had, the people you might have met, the places you might have seen. Though those lives were never lived, they still inhabit your mind. They remind you that your identity is not a single thread, but a tapestry of both presence and absence. The self you claim is haunted by the selves you never became. Even in daily life, paths not taken shape you. When you decline an invitation, you imagine what might have happened had you gone. When you miss an opportunity, you wonder how it would have changed things. These small counterfactuals accumulate, creating an invisible architecture of unlived possibilities. The paradox is that they are both unreal and deeply influential. They exist nowhere but in thought, yet they alter how you see yourself. Consider also the role of fear. Often paths remain unwalked because fear closed them off. You tell yourself, that was not for me. But sometimes you wonder, was it truly unsuited, or was it simply that fear silenced you? If so, then your identity has been shaped not only by the paths you chose, but by the fears that chose for you. Fear writes as much of your story as courage does. Philosophy touches this paradox through the concept of existential possibility. Kierkegaard wrote that the self is defined not by what it is, but by what it might become. Your essence is not only the life you live, but the infinite lives you did not. Each possibility is part of your identity. Even if it remains unlived, you are not a single path. You are the echo of all paths, chosen and unchosen alike. Imagine standing at a crossroads in a vast forest. Behind you stretches the road you have walked. Ahead of you are countless trails, some visible, some hidden in the trees. You choose one, and it feels like progress. But the forest is full of paths you will never walk. each leading to a different version of yourself. Those versions remain in the shadows, watching, whispering, reminding you of the fragility of your chosen story. This awareness can weigh heavily. Regret lingers over paths abandoned. Curiosity gnaws at paths unseen. Sometimes you feel as though your life is less about what you are and more about what you are not. But there is also a strange beauty here. The selves you never became give depth to the one you are. They frame your choices, give them meaning, make them feel precious precisely because they exclude others. Without unlived lives, the one you inhabit would not feel real at all. The paradox is sharp. You cannot live all paths, yet you are shaped by them. You carry their absence as part of your presence. They make your identity both heavier and lighter. Heavier because of regret, lighter because of possibility. The unlived selves whisper constantly, reminding you that you were never meant to be only one person. You were meant to be haunted by the infinite selves you could not become. As you drift tonight, think of the paths you never walked, the friendships you never pursued, the risks you never took, the chances you let slip away. They are gone, yet they remain. They define you not by their presence, but by their absence. You are the sum not only of what you chose, but of what you left behind. And perhaps the truth is this: you were never meant to live every life. You were meant to carry the echo of unlived lives, to feel their presence in silence, to know that identity is not a single journey, but a chorus of paths, most of which you will never touch. When you speak, you believe it is your own voice that rises from your throat, your own words spilling into the air. But if you listen closely, if you trace the echoes back, you will find that much of what you call your voice is borrowed. The tone you use, the phrases you repeat, even the very accent in your speech, these are inherited, learned, absorbed from others. Your voice, the most intimate marker of self, is not purely yours. It is a patchwork of countless influences, stitched together into the illusion of a singular sound. Think back to childhood. The first words you spoke were imitations. You listened to the voices around you, parents, siblings, caregivers, and copied their sounds. The language you grew up in was not chosen. It was given. If you had been born elsewhere, you would speak differently, think differently, even feel differently. Your voice is not the expression of a fixed self. It is the reflection of a context. You are not the author of your words, but the inheritor of them. Even the tone of your voice carries history. Perhaps you soften your words because you were taught to be polite. Perhaps you raise your volume because you were raised in noise. Perhaps you pause often because hesitation was safer than certainty. The way you speak reveals not just who you are, but who wrote you. Every syllable carries the marks of others' influence. Psychologists have shown that much of our internal dialogue, our thoughts spoken silently in the mind, comes from external voices. The critic in your head may sound suspiciously like a parent or teacher. The encouragement may echo a friend or mentor. Even when you believe you are speaking to yourself, you are often repeating voices absorbed long ago. The voice that guides you is not singular. It is a chorus, layered with echoes of others. Pause here. Think of the phrases you often repeat in your mind. Are they truly yours, or do they belong to someone else? Perhaps you tell yourself, "Don't be lazy," echoing an admonition from childhood. Perhaps you remind yourself, "You can do this," repeating encouragement once given to you. These inner voices shape your identity, yet they are not born from within. You are a host to voices that are not yours. Even creativity, which feels most personal, is full of borrowed tones. Writers echo the styles of those they read. Musicians echo the rhythms of those they hear. Painters echo the brushstrokes of teachers and traditions. Originality is always layered upon imitation. Your voice, too, is a remix of the countless voices that came before. And still you cling to the idea of ownership, convinced that your words rise uniquely from within. The paradox becomes sharper when you consider silence. In silence, you expect your true voice to emerge. Yet even there, the echoes intrude. Memories of conversations, snippets of dialogue, songs and slogans, they populate your silence. You rarely hear yourself alone, because there is no alone voice to hear. There is only the chorus. But if your voice is not yours, then who are you? Perhaps you are not the speaker, but the resonance. You are the chamber where voices converge, blending into a sound that feels like identity. Or perhaps you are the listener, mistaking the chorus for a single source. Either way, your voice is not a solitary creation but a collaboration with every voice that has ever touched you. Consider also the way voices change depending on who is listening. You adjust your tone, your speed, your vocabulary, depending on the audience. With friends, you may speak casually. With authority figures, formally. With children, gently. This adaptability feels natural, but it reveals something deeper. Your voice is not fixed. It bends and shifts, reshaping itself endlessly. If there were a true, stable voice within, why would it change so easily? The voice that isn't yours reveals itself each time you adjust to others. And yet, this does not make your voice meaningless. In fact, it makes it more mysterious. You are a vessel through which countless voices pass. You are continuity made of fragments, uniqueness made of repetition. The illusion of ownership is what allows the voice to feel stable. Without that illusion, you might dissolve into silence, unable to speak at all. Imagine standing in a canyon. You shout, and the echo returns, altered, layered, stretched. Which was the true voice, the one you spoke, or the one that returned? Identity is the same. The voice you think of as yours is already an echo, already altered by the canyon of history, culture, family, and memory. You are the echo, believing you are the origin. This recognition is unsettling, but it can also soften you. If your voice is not fully yours, then perhaps no one's is. Perhaps every person you meet is also echoing others, performing scripts, repeating lines they did not write. To realize this is to see the self, not as a solitary speaker, but as part of an endless conversation, one that began long before you and will continue long after. So tonight, as you drift into quiet, listen closely. Notice the words that rise in your mind. Ask yourself, whose voice is this? Can you trace it back, or does it dissolve into countless others, until you can no longer tell where it began? That is the truth. Your voice is not your own. It is the convergence of voices that have passed through you, leaving only the illusion of singularity. You were never meant to have one voice. You were meant to be many, speaking as one. You stand before a mirror and expect to see yourself. The glass seems to promise truth, a reflection that confirms your existence, a face that assures you that you are real. But look closer. What do you actually see? You see an image, inverted, flat, reversed. You see skin and hair, expressions and gestures, but not the self you imagine. A mirror shows surfaces, not essence. The reflection convinces you of continuity, but it cannot reveal who you are. In that sense, the mirror is both presence and absence, an image without substance, a surface without depth. It is a mirror without reflection, because what you are seeking, identity, permanence, authenticity, cannot be found in glass. Think about how you rely on mirrors. You use them to confirm appearance, to adjust presentation, to reassure yourself that you exist in the way you believe. Yet mirrors never show you as others see you. The angle is different, the light altered, the movement slightly delayed. What you recognize as me is not the truth of you, but a filtered version, a representation. You do not know your own face, except through distortions. Even here, in your most intimate recognition, the self escapes you. Psychologists note that identity itself is mirror-like. You understand who you are by reflection, by how others respond, how society reacts, how feedback returns to you, your sense of humor, your intelligence, your kindness. These are not qualities you know directly. They are mirrored back to you in others' laughter, admiration, or silence. Without reflection, you would not know yourself at all. But just as the mirror shows only surfaces, social reflection shows only fragments. You are reduced to roles, impressions, interpretations. The reflection convinces you of solidity, but it is partial, filtered, incomplete. Pause for a moment, and imagine a life without mirrors, literal or metaphorical. If no one reflected you back, who would you be? Would identity dissolve in the absence of recognition, or would you discover that what you thought was you was always just an image projected outward? This thought unsettles, because it reveals how fragile selfhood is, how dependent it is on reflection that was never truly yours. Even memory functions as a mirror. When you recall an event, you believe you are looking directly at the past, but memory is a reflection too, altered, inverted, distorted. You see yourself in the story, but it is not the full you. It is a narrative shaped by time, by interpretation, by need. Memory reflects identity back to you, convincing you of continuity, but it is as untrustworthy as a glass surface. What you see is not what truly was. Consider also the moments when mirrors fail. Think of times when you stare into glass and feel estranged, as if the reflection was someone else, or when you hear your voice recorded and recoil at its unfamiliarity. In those moments, the illusion cracks. You realize that the reflection you depend on has never truly been you. You see a mask, a stranger, a construction, and yet you return to it, because without reflection, the self feels unstable. The paradox is sharp. Mirrors convince you of your identity, yet they also prove its absence. They show you enough to cling to, but never enough to hold. They reveal appearance but conceal essence. They are both necessary and deceptive. You need reflection to believe in self, but reflection can never give you self. It is a performance of solidity, not the thing itself. Philosophers have long wrestled with this. Lacan described the mirror stage when infants first recognize themselves in reflection. In that moment, the illusion of a coherent self is born. The child sees an image and believes it is me. But this is a misrecognition, because the image is external, incomplete. Identity, from its earliest moment, is founded on a reflection that is not the self. The mirror without reflection has been with you since childhood, shaping your entire sense of existence. Imagine standing in front of a mirror that suddenly refuses to reflect. You raise your hand, but no image moves. You lean closer, but the glass remains empty. At first, terror strikes. How can you exist without proof? But then perhaps, a strange freedom arises. Without reflection, you are no longer bound to surfaces. You are no longer deceived by images. You begin to see that selfhood was never in the mirror at all. It was always a story told on the surface, never the depth you longed for. Even in dreams, mirrors play tricks. Sometimes you look into one and see a distorted face, or no face at all. These dreams echo a deeper truth, that identity is unstable, that reflection is fragile. When you wake, you dismiss the dream, but the symbolism lingers. What if waking mirrors are no more reliable? What if every reflection, literal and metaphorical, is a dream you mistake for reality? So tonight, as you drift toward sleep, imagine a mirror before you. Look closely at the image. Notice how it feels both familiar and strange. Notice how it confirms you and yet fails to reveal you. Then imagine the mirror dissolving, leaving only silence. In that silence, there is no reflection, no image, no proof. There is only awareness, pure, empty, unreflected, and perhaps in that emptiness, you glimpse the truth. You were never the reflection at all. You were never meant to be what the mirror showed. You were always meant to be the absence behind it, the mirror without reflection. You live as if the story of your life unfolds, moment by moment, shaped by choices, surprises, accidents. You believe in the uncertainty of tomorrow, in the open space of possibility. Yet beneath this comforting illusion lies a darker suspicion. Perhaps the story has already been written. Perhaps every decision, every turn, every outcome is part of a script decided long before you knew you were a character. You think you are improvising, but what if you are only performing lines that were waiting for you all along? Science brushes close to this idea. Neuroscientists like Benjamin Liebe showed that brain activity predicting a decision occurs before conscious awareness. You feel as if you freely choose, but the choice is already in motion before you arrive. If that is true, then your conscious self is not the author but the commentator, announcing decisions already made. The story continues regardless of your belief in authorship. Philosophy, too. Whispers of predetermination. Spinoza argued that free will is an illusion, that all actions follow from prior causes in an unbroken chain. The universe is not random, it is necessity unfolding. If you laugh, it is because you were caused to laugh. If you weep, it is because the chain demanded it. In such a view, your life is less a story you write and more a book you are forced to read, line by line, unable to alter a single word. Pause and think of the pivotal moments in your own life. The friends you met, the opportunities that appeared, the accidents that changed everything. Did you truly control these encounters, or were they placed in your path by circumstances beyond you? If you had been born a decade earlier, or in another place, or to different parents, your entire life would be unrecognizable. The story already decided is not just about the future, it is about how little you controlled the beginning. Even your personality, which you treat as proof of individuality, may be scripted. Genetics shape temperament. Early environment molds behavior. Culture carves preferences. You call yourself shy or bold, thoughtful or reckless, but these traits are products of causes stretching back far before your awareness. You believe in a stable you, but that stability may simply be the consistency of a story already written into your biology and history. This thought can feel suffocating. If everything is predetermined, where is freedom? Where is meaning? But consider another possibility. Perhaps meaning does not require freedom. A novel can be moving, even if its ending is fixed. A song can move you, even though its notes are arranged. Perhaps life's beauty is not in its unpredictability, but in how it unfolds with inevitability. Perhaps the power lies not in authorship, but in immersion. Imagine watching a film you already know by heart. You know the ending, yet you still feel the tension, the joy, the grief. The experience is real, even though the outcome is certain. Your life may be the same, a story already decided, yet still worth living because of how it feels along the way. Still, the paradox deepens. If the story is already written, why does it feel like you are choosing? Perhaps the illusion of choice is necessary for the story to make sense. A character who knew the ending would no longer act. The performance requires belief. You must think you are free, even if you are not. Otherwise, the play collapses. The illusion of agency is itself part of the script. Consider also the moments when you sense inevitability. A meeting that feels fated. A mistake that seems unavoidable. A coincidence too precise to ignore. You call it destiny, fate, synchronicity. But perhaps what you are glimpsing is the faint outline of the script, the story already decided, leaking into awareness. These moments feel eerie because they break the illusion of randomness. They remind you that you may not be improvising at all. And yet, within this framework, there is still mystery. Even if the story is fixed, you do not know its ending. You live in suspense, page by page, unaware of what comes next. The lack of authorship does not erase the depth of experience. It may in fact intensify it, because if you cannot change the story, all you can do is live it fully, feel it deeply, immerse yourself in the moment that has been given. So tonight, as you drift deeper, ask yourself, what if your life is already written? What if you were never meant to be the author, but the reader, carried by a current too vast to control? Perhaps the freedom you long for is not freedom of choice, but freedom of surrender. Freedom to let the story unfold without clinging to authorship. And perhaps the truth is this: you were never meant to be the writer of your story. You were always meant to be the character, walking faithfully along the lines of a tale already decided. When you look in the mirror, or see a photograph of yourself, you assume there is one face, one identity reflected back. But in truth, your face is never singular. It is a collage, a shifting projection, layered with the faces of others. You are not only yourself, you are your parents' resemblance, your ancestors' features, society's interpretations, strangers' expectations. Your face is a mask layered with history, a surface where countless identities overlap. Think of how others describe you. One person calls you kind, another distant, another intelligent, another foolish. None of them are wrong, yet none of them capture the whole. Each sees a different face, a different version of you. To your family, you may still wear the face of a child. To your co-workers, the face of competence or failure. To a stranger, perhaps only the face of a passing silhouette. You do not own a single identity. You are the overlap of how others perceive you. Even within yourself, faces shift. Some days you feel confident, and your posture alters, your features harden into strength. Other days you feel fragile, and your face softens, your voice quiets, your body shrinks. Which is the real you? The confident one? The fragile one? Or is the truth that you are all of them, overlapping, dissolving into each other? Identity is not one face but a moving gallery, each expression borrowing from another, none of them permanent. Biology deepens this mystery. Your face is written by genetics, shaped by ancestors you never met. When someone says, "You look just like your grandmother," you realize you are carrying a face that is not only yours. Centuries live in your skin. Echoes of lives long gone pressed into your features. Your identity begins to dissolve the moment you see how little of your face belongs to you alone. Culture, too, overlays faces upon you. Stereotypes, expectations, labels, they all stick, whether or not you choose them. Someone may look at you and see not a person, but a category: race, gender, class, religion. Their interpretation covers your face with another, and you are forced to carry it. You may resist, you may protest, but the overlapping faces persist. You are never free of how others see you, never free of the identities imposed. Pause here. Think about a time when you were misunderstood. Perhaps someone assumed you were arrogant when you were only shy. Perhaps someone thought you were cold when you were protecting yourself. In those moments you felt erased, replaced by a face that was not yours. And yet their perception shaped your reality. It changed how they treated you, how you responded, how the story unfolded. Their imagined face became part of your overlapping identity. Even memory overlays faces. When you recall your younger self, do you see them as they were, or as you imagine them now? The child in your memory wears both the face they once had, and the face you project backward. The past you becomes another overlapping mask, shaped by recollection. You are haunted not only by who you are, but by who you once believed yourself to be. The paradox of overlapping faces is this. You want to find a single, true face, a stable core beneath all projections. But each time you peel one away, another emerges. The family's face, the culture's face, the stranger's face, the memory's face, and behind them all, only absence. There is no final face waiting beneath. The self is layers upon layers, none of which can claim authenticity. Imagine standing in a hall of portraits. Some show you smiling, others serious, others broken, others radiant. You walk down the hall, searching for the true one, but each painting feels both real and false. They overlap, blur, dissolve into one another, until you realize there is no final portrait. The self is not a single canvas, but the overlapping of many, flickering endlessly. This realization can bring unease. If you have no single face, who are you? How do you know yourself if you are never one? But it can also bring release. If you are many, you are not trapped. You can shift, adapt, reinvent. You are not chained to one identity. You are the sum of overlaps, and the overlaps never end. Philosophers and poets have long intuited this. Walt Whitman wrote, "I contain multitudes." Jung spoke of archetypes living within each person. Modern psychology describes the self as modular, composed of different selves that emerge depending on context. These ideas converge on one truth. The self is never singular. It is plural, overlapping, fluid. So tonight, as you drift into quiet, picture the faces you carry, the one you show to family, the one you wear at work, the one you reveal in solitude. See how they overlap, forming a shifting collage. Notice how none of them are false, yet none of them are complete. The self you long for, the singular, stable identity, was never meant to exist. You were always meant to be many faces, overlapping endlessly, dissolving into the silence behind them. There are times when you look at your own hands, and they feel foreign. Times when you hear your voice and wonder why it sounds unfamiliar. Times when your reflection surprises you, as though someone else is staring back. In those moments, you feel like a stranger inside your own skin. The body you inhabit seems both intimate and alien, a vessel you know deeply yet never fully claim. This paradox, being both occupant and outsider, reveals the fragile boundary between self and body. From birth, you are taught that your body is you. Scraped knees, growing pains, hunger, fatigue. These sensations convince you that identity is stitched into flesh. Yet even as a child, you experienced disconnection. You spoke of your body in pieces. My hand hurts. My stomach aches. Already, you divided yourself from your skin, speaking as if you were something inside, trapped within. The language itself betrays the illusion. You are not the body, you are something observing it. Consider the phenomenon of dissociation. People describe moments of floating outside themselves, of watching their body act while they feel absent. In trauma, this becomes extreme. The body continues, but the self detaches, leaving only emptiness within. Even in ordinary life, though, traces remain. Daydreaming, losing track of time, forgetting how you arrived somewhere. These reveal how easily you slip from your skin, becoming a stranger in your own form. Neurology deepens the puzzle. Patients with certain brain injuries sometimes deny ownership of their limbs, insisting an arm belongs to someone else. Others experience the rubber hand illusion, where a fake hand stroked in sync with their hidden real hand convinces the brain that the fake one is theirs. These phenomena show how fragile the sense of embodiment is, how easily it can be tricked. If the brain can be fooled into claiming or rejecting parts of the body, then the certainty of "this is me" collapses. Even ordinary changes create alienation. Think of how strange your body feels when you are sick, when exhaustion makes your limbs heavy, when age alters your skin, when scars appear. You look down and feel estranged, as if the body you trusted has betrayed you. Or consider puberty. One day the body shifts, hormones surge, and suddenly the familiar form feels like someone else's. These transitions remind you that the body is not a stable home. It is a shifting landscape, and you are both tenant and wanderer. Pause for a moment, and remember the last time you felt detached from yourself. Maybe it was seeing a photograph where you barely recognized your own face. Maybe it was hearing your recorded voice and cringing at how foreign it sounded. That discomfort reveals the truth. The body is not seamless identity. It is a mask you wear so convincingly that you forget it is a mask until the illusion cracks. Philosophers have struggled with this divide. Descartes argued for the duality of mind and body, suggesting that consciousness resides apart from flesh. Buddhism, by contrast, dissolves even this distinction, teaching that body and self alike are illusions, impermanent forms mistaken for essence. Both perspectives converge on one idea: the body is not as solidly you as it feels. You are a stranger in your own skin, because there was never a perfect union between consciousness and body in the first place. Consider dreams again. In them, you often inhabit bodies that are not quite yours. Sometimes you are younger, sometimes older, sometimes moving with impossible strength or trapped in paralysis. You accept these bodies as yours within the dream, only to wake and realize they were strange. But what if waking life is similar? What if the body you call yours now is just another temporary dream form, one you will eventually wake from? This thought is unsettling, but also clarifying. If the body is not entirely yours, then perhaps you do not need to cling to it so desperately. You can care for it, inhabit it, respect it, without mistaking it for essence. The body becomes a vessel, a temporary garment, something you wear for a time before discarding. The stranger in your skin is not proof of absence but proof of transience. Imagine walking through a house that is familiar but slightly off. The furniture has shifted, the colors are wrong, the windows look out on strange landscapes. That unease is how you sometimes feel in your own skin, and yet you continue to live there, adjusting, adapting, pretending it is fully yours. Identity is the same, you dwell within it, even as you sense it is not fully home. The paradox is that this estrangement is part of being human. To feel like a stranger in your skin is not failure, it is recognition. It is the moment you glimpse the gap between self and form, between consciousness and body, between story and vessel. You were never meant to feel perfectly at home. You were meant to wander within your own flesh, both belonging and not belonging. So tonight, as you settle into rest, notice your body, feel the weight of your limbs, the rhythm of your breath, the pulse beneath your skin. Recognize the intimacy and the strangeness. You are both inside and outside, both resident and guest. And perhaps that is the truth. You were never meant to be perfectly at home in your body. You are always meant to be, in some way, a stranger in your skin. You build your identity on memory. The stories you tell about yourself, the continuity you cling to, the sense of being one person across time, all of it depends on the assumption that memory is reliable. But what if memory lies? What if the images you recall, the feelings you replay, the events you are certain of, are not accurate records, but reconstructions, distortions, even fabrications? If memory lies, then the self you believe in is also a lie. Neuroscience confirms this unsettling truth. Memories are not stored like photographs in the brain. They are reassembled each time you recall them. Each recollection is like rewriting a file, vulnerable to error, influence, and imagination. Details shift, gaps are filled, emotions bleed across events. Over time, what you remember may have little resemblance to what truly occurred. You are convinced of authenticity, yet your mind is performing creative revision. Psychologists have demonstrated how easily false memories can be planted. In experiments, participants were told stories of events that never happened, being lost in a mall, meeting a certain character, experiencing specific details. Many later recalled these events vividly, swearing they were true. Suggestion, repetition, and imagination fused into belief. If memory can be manufactured so easily, then what confidence can you have in your own past? Pause here and think of one of your strongest memories. Perhaps a childhood holiday, a first love, a defining moment. Can you swear with certainty that every detail is accurate, or have you pieced it together from photographs, retellings, impressions? Perhaps you remember wearing a certain shirt, though the picture shows otherwise. Perhaps you recall someone being present who could not have been there. These small cracks reveal a larger truth. Memory lies, and you believe it because you need to. Even collective memory deceives. Families often retell stories that change with each telling, smoothing over inconvenient truths, emphasizing certain details, erasing others. Over time, the memory becomes shared myth, believed as fact. Nations do the same, rewriting history to create identity. The memory of a people becomes a selective lie, shaping collective selfhood, just as personal false memories shape individual identity. The paradox is sharp. You need memory to hold on to self, but memory cannot be trusted. Without it, you would dissolve into the present, a flicker with no continuity. With it, you are stitched together by distortions, half-truths, and inventions. Either way, the stability of self is compromised. You are either too fragmented to cohere, or too deceived to be authentic. Consider trauma again. Survivors often have fragmented, distorted, or suppressed memories. Sometimes the mind protects by erasing. Sometimes it distorts so severely that the memory becomes a blur of sensations rather than clear narrative. Yet even in this state, memory continues to define identity. A forgotten event can still shape behavior, fear, and self-concept. In this way, memory lies not only through distortion, but through absence. What you forget is as powerful as what you recall. Dreams blur the line further. You sometimes wake with a dream so vivid that it feels like memory. Hours later, the edges fray, and you realize it never happened. But how many waking memories are similar, bright at first, then fading, reshaping, merging with imagination, until you cannot separate what was lived from what was dreamed. If memory lies, perhaps dream and waking are closer than you realize. Imagine walking through a library filled with books labeled as your memories. You open one and find details missing, others scribbled in later, some pages replaced entirely. Yet, when you close the book, you insist it was accurate. This is how your mind works, revising constantly, while convincing you of stability. The lie is not malicious, it is survival. You need a story to carry forward, even if that story is false. Philosophers like Nietzsche warned that memory is both a gift and a curse. It creates identity, but it also deceives. Buddhists go further, teaching that clinging to memory creates suffering because it makes you believe in a continuous self that does not exist. To see memory as illusion is to glimpse freedom. Without the lie, you realize that you are not bound to the past at all. You are only ever here, in this fleeting moment. But this freedom can feel like loss. If memories lie, then who are you? If your most cherished recollections are distortions, does that mean the self you believe in is a fiction? Perhaps yes, but perhaps fiction has its own kind of truth. A story does not need to be factually accurate to shape meaning. Memory, even when it lies, creates coherence, gives direction, sustains the illusion of identity. The lie is not betrayal, it is foundation. So tonight as you drift, notice your memories rising. Watch how they replay, how they shift, how they bring emotions with them. Ask yourself, is this true, or is this invention? Can you ever know? Or is the point, not accuracy, but continuity, the need to believe in a past, even a false one, so that the self can feel real for another day? Perhaps that is the secret. You were never meant to have memories that tell the truth. You were meant to be shaped by memories that lie, because without them, there would be no you at all. You experience yourself as the observer of life, the witness behind the eyes. You watch your thoughts rise, your body move, the world unfold before you. This position feels central, as if there is a core eye directing the flow. Yet if you look more closely, you realize something unsettling. The observer is not in control. Thoughts appear without permission. Emotions surge uninvited. The body acts before you command it. You are the witness, but you are not the author. Think about breathing. You tell yourself you can control it, and for a while you can, slowing, deepening, holding. But soon the body takes over, continuing without your attention. Heartbeats, digestion, reflexes. These happen regardless of your will. You observe them, but you cannot claim authorship. The body moves through rhythms older than you, guided by systems outside your reach. You are carried, not commanding. Even in thought, control slips away. Sit quietly and notice the stream of your mind. Images, words, fragments arise without your consent. One moment you think of the past, another of the future, another of something random. Did you summon these, or did they simply appear? Neuroscientists argue that thoughts are generated unconsciously before they surface in awareness. You are the observer, arriving late to the performance. By the time you notice the thought, it is already there. Pause for a moment and recall the last time an emotion overwhelmed you. Perhaps anger erupted, or sadness washed over you, or joy surged unexpectedly. Did you choose these states, or did they arrive unbidden, carrying you with them. You may attempt to regulate, to suppress, to redirect, but the initial spark was beyond you. You observed the flame, but you did not strike the match. This realization unsettles because it fractures the illusion of agency. You want to believe the observer directs the play, but the evidence suggests otherwise. The play unfolds, and the observer watches. You are the audience of your own life, seated in the theater of consciousness, mistaking yourself for the director. Philosophy has circled this paradox for centuries. The Stoics urged acceptance, recognizing that much lies beyond control. Eastern traditions, especially Buddhism, teach that the observer is not an enduring self, but a process of awareness, empty of control. Modern cognitive science echoes this consciousness, does not govern so much as it narrates, weaving a story after the fact, to give the impression of authorship. You tell yourself, I chose this, but the choice was already in motion. Imagine standing at a riverbank. Thoughts, emotions, sensations flow past like water. You dip your hand in, but the current does not obey. It moves of its own accord. You are there to witness, not to control. This is your life, a river unfolding, while you watch from the shore, mistaking observation for command. And yet, the paradox deepens. Though you lack control, the illusion of control feels necessary. Without it, despair looms. If you believed fully that you were only a spectator, why act at all? Why rise from bed? Why strive? Why choose? The illusion of agency keeps you engaged, sustaining the story. You live as if you direct, even while deeper forces carry you. The observer survives on the fiction of control. Consider driving a car. Most movements, turning the wheel, pressing pedals, checking mirrors, become automatic with practice. You feel in control, but your body performs much of it unconsciously. Only when something unexpected happens, do you notice how little conscious thought is involved. Life is similar. You move through routines, convinced of authorship, but most of it is scripted beneath awareness. You are the passenger, convinced you are the driver. Even morality depends on this illusion. Society holds you accountable as if you controlled your choices. Praise and blame rely on the assumption of agency, but if the observer is without control, then punishment and reward lose their foundation. What sense is there in blaming someone for actions that unfolded beyond their conscious authorship? And yet we continue to live as if accountability is real, because without it, society itself would collapse. This dual truth, lack of control yet necessity of belief, creates tension at the heart of existence. You are both powerless and responsible, both observer and actor. You float in between, unable to claim either role completely. But perhaps there is another way to see this. If you are not the controller, then you are free from the burden of authorship. You do not have to own every thought, every action, every outcome. You can let them rise and fall like waves, knowing they are not you. You are the awareness in which they appear, not the one who commands them. This freedom is subtle, quiet, but profound. Imagine again the river. Instead of fighting the current, instead of pretending to control it, you sit back and watch. The water moves on its own, carrying leaves, carrying reflections of clouds, carrying fragments of the world. You do not need to own it. You only need to witness. The beauty lies not in control but in presence. So tonight, as you rest, notice your thoughts drifting. Watch them rise without asking, fall without effort. Notice how the body breathes, how the heart beats, how sensations move. You are here, watching. You do not control. You were never meant to. You were always meant to be the observer without control. You think of life as a series of choices, moments where you stood at a crossroads, weighed your options, and selected a path. You remember the gravity of deciding, the relief or regret that followed. Choice feels like the proof of your autonomy, the evidence that you are steering the story of your life. But what if the truth is inverted? What if you did not choose your choices at all? What if the choices chose you? Pause for a moment, and consider how decisions form. A desire rises, seemingly out of nowhere. A thought emerges, steering you toward one option. An emotion pushes, sometimes urgently, sometimes softly. Did you summon these? Did you choose to want what you want? No, the desire appeared, uninvited, as if handed to you, and once it arrived, the path was already narrowed. You did not choose the desire chose you. Science has confirmed how little control you have. Studies show that neural activity predicts decisions before you are conscious of them. By the time you say, I've decided, your brain has already acted. Your role is to narrate after the fact, to claim authorship over choices that were already unfolding. This is why you sometimes feel as though you are watching yourself act, powerless to stop, yet convinced afterward that you meant to do it. The illusion of choice is maintained by your own narration. Think of smaller choices too. What to eat, what to wear, which words to say. Were these truly yours? Or were they influenced by advertising, upbringing, social expectations, or even random mood shifts? You eat because a smell caught your attention, wear something because it was clean, speak a phrase because you heard it somewhere else. These decisions reveal themselves as scripts, shaped by invisible hands. The choices chose you long before you noticed them. Even larger life decisions follow this pattern. Did you choose your career, or did circumstances push you toward it? Did you choose your partner, or did timing, proximity, and chance narrow the field until the choice appeared obvious? Did you choose your values, or were they instilled by culture, family, and history? You feel ownership, but beneath it lies a web of causes that left little room for true freedom. You did not arrive at your choices, they arrived at you. Philosophy has long wrestled with this paradox. Schopenhauer wrote, "Man can do what he wills, but he cannot will what he wills." You may act according to desire, but you cannot choose the desire itself. You cannot choose to suddenly want what you don't want, or to stop wanting what you do. The will feels free, but it is enslaved to impulses you did not author. The choices you think you make are only expressions of forces beyond you. And yet, the illusion persists. You replay moments in your life, telling yourself you could have chosen differently, but could you? In that exact moment, with those desires, fears, and influences in place, was any other choice truly possible, or did the conditions make the outcome inevitable? Regret becomes less about what you did, and more about what you think you could have done. Yet the truth is that the choice chose you, and no other was ever truly available. This realization can feel disorienting, even painful. If choices choose you, where is freedom? Where is responsibility? But look closer, and you may find something liberating. If you are not the ultimate author of your choices, then you are not condemned by them either. You are not a fixed sum of your past decisions. You are the unfolding of conditions, shifting constantly, open to change not because of willpower alone, but because new influences can shape new directions. Imagine standing in a vast field of wind. The gusts push you one way, then another. You tell yourself you are walking of your own accord, but in truth, the wind carries you. Yet this does not mean you are helpless. You can lean into certain gusts, adjust your steps, find rhythm within the flow. Freedom is not total control. It is awareness of the forces moving you, a willingness to dance with them rather than resist. Think again of your own life. Were there moments when you said, "I had no choice"? Perhaps you were right. The conditions left no other option. But there were also moments when new influences entered. An unexpected friend, a new perspective, a sudden event, and your direction shifted. The choice was not born within you. It came to you from outside, altering your path. The choices chose you, but sometimes they carried transformation. The paradox is clear. You live as though you are the chooser, but you are also the chosen. Choices arrive, shaped by forces unseen, and you embrace them as your own. The story of self continues because you believe you authored it, but beneath the surface, you are being written. So tonight, as you reflect, think of the decisions that define you. Notice how many were guided by influences beyond your control. Notice how desires arrived unbidden, how fears narrowed the field, how chance encounters shaped direction. These choices chose you, and you followed. Perhaps this realization softens regret, lightens guilt, eases pride. For in the end, you were never meant to be the sole chooser. You were meant to be chosen, carried by the river of causes, watching as the story of self unfolds. There are moments when you look back and realize that the person you once were is gone. Perhaps it is subtle. You stumble upon an old photograph, hear your younger voice in a recording, or recall a thought you once clung to with certainty. Suddenly, you feel the absence. That self, so vivid then, has slipped away. You carry the memory of them, but they no longer exist, except as echoes. The paradox of identity is that you live each moment, believing you are continuous, yet you are always vanishing, always losing versions of yourself that never return. Think about your earliest self, the child who saw the world with wonder. Where are they now? You remember fragments, laughter, fears, small victories, but you do not feel them as your own anymore. You inhabit their body and memory, but their thoughts, their simplicity, their unformed identity are gone. You replaced them without noticing. The child slipped away quietly, leaving you to inherit their story but not their presence. Even more recent selves dissolve. The teenager who believed in certain truths, who dressed in certain ways, who longed for recognition, that self is absent too. You might cringe when remembering them, or feel nostalgia, or even grief, but no matter how vividly you recall, you cannot return. That version of you has slipped away, as surely as a dream dissolves upon waking. Psychology describes this as temporal selves. At different points in life, you are psychologically distinct, yet you weave the illusion of continuity by telling a story that binds them together. But the truth is more fragile. Each version of you is temporary, destined to dissolve. The I that listens now is not the I that lived years ago, nor the I that will live tomorrow. You survive by forgetting how many selves have slipped away. Pause and consider relationships. How often have you looked at someone and thought, they've changed? The person you loved yesterday is not the same today, but so too are you not the same. Friendships end not always because of betrayal, but because selves slip away. Two rivers that once flowed together diverge as their currents shift, and yet you grieve as if permanence was promised. Even in daily life, selves dissolve. Yesterday's self is gone, replaced by today's. The you that woke this morning is already altered by what you have seen, thought, and felt. By tonight, even this self will slip away. Identity is not stable. It is a succession of disappearances. Continuity is a story you tell so you don't feel the loss. Philosophers touch this paradox often. Heraclitus said, "You cannot step into the same river twice. The river flows, and both it and you are different each time." Buddhism goes further, teaching that the self is impermanent, a bundle of processes without enduring essence. The self that slips away is not an accident. It is the nature of being. You are a flickering flame, never the same from one moment to the next. And yet, the illusion persists. You cling to identity, to stories that suggest you remain. You call yourself by one name, even though countless selves have worn it. You believe in permanence, even though every day proves otherwise. Without this illusion, you would drown in grief for the selves lost. You survive by forgetting. But sometimes, forgetting cracks. You find an old journal and barely recognize the voice. You see your reflection and feel estranged. You speak words that surprise you, realizing you have changed. These moments of recognition remind you that the self has slipped away again and again and again. They reveal the fragility of continuity, the impossibility of permanence. Still, there is beauty in this vanishing, because if selves slip away, then you are not trapped. You can let go of past mistakes, past identities, past fears. The self that carried them is gone. You are new again and again, whether you notice or not. The loss of continuity is also freedom. You are not bound forever to the story you once told. You can begin anew because you are always beginning. Imagine standing on a shoreline at night. Waves roll in, each one distinct, each one fading back into the ocean. You tell yourself, it is the same sea, but the waves are never the same. You are like this, wave after wave of self, appearing, dissolving, replaced. The continuity is real, but only as flow, not as permanence. Each self slips away into the sea of time, leaving you to believe there was one unbroken wave. The paradox is sharp. You grieve the loss of old selves, yet you would not survive if they remained. You could not grow, could not change, could not adapt. The slipping away makes space for becoming. What feels like loss is also transformation. So tonight, as you rest, think of the selves you have lost. The child, the teenager, the past lover, the former worker, the forgotten dreamer. They are gone, but they made space for you now. And you too will slip away soon, replaced by another self. You were never meant to remain fixed. You were always meant to dissolve, again and again, into the silence of the self that slipped away. Long before you could speak, a name was waiting for you. It was chosen, whispered, written down, and attached to you like a label on an object. From your first breath, that name shaped how others saw you, how they called to you, how they treated you. The paradox is this: the word you most associate with identity, your name, was never yours to choose. It was written beforehand, binding you to a story before you even knew what stories were. Think of the weight of names. Some carry history, passed down through generations, carrying echoes of ancestors. Others carry meanings, chosen to inspire or protect. Some are casual, some are sacred, some are imposed, but no matter the reason, your name was not a choice. It was a gift, a burden, a chain. It became the first mask you wore, a sound that summoned you into existence. Without it, you might not have learned who you were supposed to be. From the earliest moments, you responded to it. When called, you turned your head, trained like a reflex. The sound became you. Over time it merged with your sense of self so completely that hearing it spoken by others could make your heart race, your body tense, your attention snap to focus. Few sounds in the world carry such power, yet it is power you did not create, it was given. Psychologists note how names influence identity subtly but powerfully. Studies show that names can affect career choices, social acceptance, even how people are judged. A name can open doors or close them. It can shape first impressions before you speak a word. It can even determine how you see yourself. If your name is associated with strength, you may grow into it. If it is associated with weakness, you may struggle against it. The script begins not with your voice, but with the voices of others calling your name. Pause and reflect on how many times you have said, "That's just who I am." But what if that who began with nothing more than a sound attached to you at birth? What if the foundation of your identity rests on a word you never chose? Your name was written beforehand, and you inherited the weight of its meaning. Culture deepens this. Some names tie you to religion, linking you to saints, prophets, or deities. Others tie you to history, aligning you with heroes or rulers. Even when you do not intend it, others project these associations onto you. The name becomes a story told about you before you speak a word. You spend your life living within or against it, shaping yourself around expectations you never asked for. Even nicknames reveal this paradox. Sometimes friends, family, or strangers rename you, reshaping your identity with new sounds. You may resist or embrace them, but either way, they influence you. Each name feels like a mirror held up, showing a different version of you, which is real. None of them entirely, each is a mask, another script written by others, attached to you whether you consent or not. Consider how strange it feels when someone mispronounces your name, or calls you by the wrong one. It creates a rupture, a sense of being erased. You feel unseen, as though the sound of you has been distorted. This reveals how deeply the name binds you. It is not merely a word, it is the handle by which the world grips your existence. Without it, you fear you might vanish. Philosophers and poets have long intuited this. Some argue that names are illusions, attempts to capture what cannot be contained. To name something is to fix it, to pin it down, to limit it. Yet life is fluid, shifting beyond the boundaries of words. Your name gives the illusion of permanence, but beneath it, you are always changing. The name remains while the selves beneath it slip away. Imagine a book already titled before it is written. Every chapter must now live under that title. Whether it fits or not, that is your life. The title, your name, was decided before your story began. You may try to rewrite the content, but the cover follows you everywhere. Some learn to embrace it, some to resent it, some to reinvent it entirely. But even reinvention acknowledges the power of the name written beforehand. The paradox deepens when you realize how easily names can change. A legal form, a new culture, a new stage of life. Suddenly you are called something else, and yet, you adapt. The new name feels strange at first, then becomes yours, revealing how arbitrary yet binding names are. They shape identity not because they are true, but because you believe in them, because others enforce them, because repetition carves them into being. So who are you, beyond your name? Strip it away, and silence follows. You are left without a label, without a sound to answer to. Does the self remain, or does it dissolve with the word? Perhaps identity is less than you think, less substance and more sound. Syllables echoing across time, convincing you of permanence. Tonight, as you rest, think of your own name. Say it silently in your mind. Hear how it carries echoes of parents, culture, history. Feel how it summons your sense of self, even though it was never yours to choose. And then imagine letting it go, watching it fade into silence. What remains when the name is gone? Perhaps nothing, or perhaps everything. Perhaps you were never meant to be bound to a single name at all. You were always meant to be the silence beneath, waiting before the names were written. There is power in the gaze. To be looked at is to be recognized, pulled into existence by another's eyes. A gaze can affirm, judge, question, or erase. But here lies the paradox. When you are seen, you also feel displaced. The gaze does not belong to you. It defines you from outside, assigning meaning you cannot control, and in that moment, you feel both visible and alien, both present and excluded. The gaze that finds you does not give you belonging. It reminds you that belonging is always fragile. Think of childhood, when the gaze of parents or teachers shaped your earliest sense of self. A look of approval lifted you, while a glance of disappointment cut you down. Even before words, you learned to read meaning in eyes. The gaze told you who you were, whether you were safe, whether you were loved, and so you became dependent on it, craving the recognition of others. Yet dependence also meant alienation. Your identity was never solely yours, it was reflected through their gaze. Sociologists and philosophers have written about this tension. Jean-Paul Sartre described the gaze as a force that objectifies. When someone looks at you, you are no longer a free subject. You become an object under observation. Their perception freezes you, reducing you to a category. You feel yourself become a character in their story, even as you long to be more. The gaze, far from granting belonging, exposes your separateness. Pause for a moment, and remember a time when you felt self-conscious. Walking into a room, giving a presentation, standing in line as strangers glanced at you. That sensation, the heat rising in your face, the awkward awareness of your body was the effect of the gaze. You were no longer simply being, you were being seen. The gaze took ownership of you, assigning meaning without your consent. Even in intimacy, the gaze is double-edged. To be looked at lovingly can feel like home, as though you truly belong in another's eyes. Yet even here, displacement lingers. The beloved sees you through their own lens, their own desires, their own stories. You feel recognized, but you also know the image is partial, never complete. The gaze that makes you feel most alive also reminds you that you can never fully belong within it. Consider also how you gaze at yourself. Mirrors, cameras, reflections in windows. You observe yourself as if you were another. You pose, adjust, criticize, admire. You treat your own image as an object. In these moments, you are both subject and stranger, both the one who sees and the one who is seen. You gaze at yourself, but do you belong to the image, or are you always displaced, alien, even to your own eyes? Culture magnifies this paradox. Advertising, media, social platforms, they teach you to internalize the gaze, to live as though always being watched. You craft yourself for others' eyes, seeking likes, approval, validation. But the more you perform for the gaze, the less you belong to yourself. You become alienated, caught between the image you present and the person you feel within. The gaze shapes you, but it never lets you settle. Imagine walking through a crowded street. Eyes glance at you, some linger, some pass. Each gaze projects a meaning you cannot control. To one, you are anonymous. To another, threatening. To another, still desirable. Each interpretation overlays you with identities you never chose. You are defined in countless ways, yet none of them belong to you. You walk surrounded by gazes, and with each one belonging slips further away. The paradox deepens when you realize how much you long for belonging in the gaze, even though it cannot provide it. You chase recognition, approval, validation, thinking it will make you whole, yet each time the gaze reduces you to less than you are. Belonging is promised but never delivered. You are left with the haunting truth. The gaze reveals you, but it does not anchor you. Philosophy suggests another way of seeing. Perhaps belonging does not come from the gaze of others, but from stepping outside of it altogether, to exist without needing to be seen, to find presence in silence rather than reflection. But this is difficult, because from the beginning, you have been trained to crave the gaze. The eyes of others have always told you who you are. To let go of that is to enter unfamiliar territory, to risk feeling invisible. And yet, invisibility can be freedom. Without the gaze, you are not reduced, not fixed, not judged. You dissolve into the moment, belonging not to an image, but to existence itself. Belonging without the gaze may not feel familiar, but it may be truer. So tonight, as you reflect, think of the gazes that have shaped you, the approving ones, the condemning ones, the indifferent ones. See how each pulled at your identity, assigning you roles that never fully fit. Then imagine closing those eyes, stepping outside their reach. In that silence, notice what remains. Perhaps belonging does not come from being seen at all. Perhaps you were never meant to belong to the gaze. You were meant to wander beyond it, carrying the truth of a gaze without belonging. Imagine standing in a room where every wall is made of mirrors. No matter where you turn, you see yourself staring back. At first it feels reassuring. You exist. You are visible. You are reflected endlessly. But soon the reflections close in. Each mirror shows a slightly different angle, a slightly different you, a slightly distorted image, and suddenly, the comfort shifts into confinement. You cannot escape yourself. You are trapped inside a prison made of mirrors. This is what identity often feels like. Every reflection, every opinion, every memory, every expectation becomes a mirror that defines you. Friends, family, colleagues, strangers on the street, each holds up a reflection, and you begin to see yourself only through them. Even when you are alone, memory provides more mirrors, replaying versions of you from the past. Wherever you turn, you are confronted with images of who you are supposed to be. The paradox is sharp. You crave reflection because it reassures you that you exist, but too much reflection becomes suffocating. The more mirrors surround you, the less freedom you feel. You begin to live for the image rather than the experience. You become obsessed with how you appear, how you are perceived, how you are reflected. Identity shifts from being to performing, from presence to imprisonment. Pause for a moment and recall a time you were hyper-aware of yourself, perhaps speaking in public, posing for a photograph, or walking into a room full of strangers. You became split, one part of you living the moment, another part watching yourself from outside, as if through a mirror. That self-consciousness is the prison. You are both actor and audience, never fully immersed, never free. Social media amplifies this prison. Every post, every photo, every comment is another mirror reflecting you back. You measure yourself through likes, comments, views. You curate images for others, then internalize their reflections. Over time, the performance becomes reality. You no longer know who you are outside the mirrors, outside the constant feedback loop of reflection. The prison grows tighter, shinier, more convincing. Even relationships can reinforce this prison. A partner sees you as kind, and you feel compelled to act kindly. A parent sees you as capable, and you carry the weight of expectation. A society sees you as belonging to a category, and you are forced to wear that reflection. None of these mirrors are false, but none of them are whole. They fragment you, trapping you in partial versions of yourself. Philosophers have long explored this trap. Lacan described the mirror stage, when a child first recognizes its reflection and mistakes the image for a coherent self. From that moment, the illusion of unity begins, even though the self is fractured. Later, Sartre argued that being seen by others makes you an object frozen in their gaze. Both ideas point to the same truth. Mirrors, literal or metaphorical, create the illusion of identity, but also the confinement of it. Imagine again the mirrored room. At first you might search for the true reflection among the infinite images, but none of them is exact. Each is slightly off, slightly alien. The more you search, the more lost you feel. This is the prison. Endless searching for a self that cannot be found because it does not exist as a singular truth. You are not one reflection. You are the shifting play of all of them. And yet, there is a strange possibility here. If the prison is made of mirrors, then perhaps the key is not escape, but recognition, to see the mirrors for what they are, illusions, surfaces, fragments, and no longer mistake them for essence. You may never find a true self in reflection, but you can learn to stop searching for it there. The mirrors remain, but they no longer imprison. Buddhism touches this idea in teaching that the self is empty, constructed from causes, conditions, perceptions. When you realize there is no permanent self to reflect, the mirrors lose their power. They still show images, but the images are no longer mistaken for truth. The prison becomes a hall of illusions, and you, no longer trapped, simply walk through. Pause now, and think of your own mirrors. The roles you play, the identities reflected back, the labels you carry. Notice how many of them you have mistaken for your essence. Notice how much of your life has been spent maintaining them. Then imagine, just for a moment, that you step back, that you let the mirrors show what they will without believing in their permanence. The reflections blur, and in that blur freedom begins. So tonight, as you drift, picture yourself in that mirrored room. See the countless faces staring back, each one you and not you. Feel the weight of their presence, the suffocation of their endless gaze. And then, imagine closing your eyes. In the darkness behind your eyelids, the mirrors vanish. The prison dissolves. You are no longer trapped by reflection because you realize you were never the image at all. You were always the awareness, the silence, the witness moving freely through the prison made of mirrors. Every day you wake and step into a story already in progress. The language you use, the gestures you make, the roles you play, all of them are borrowed. You believe you are improvising, but in truth, you are following a script handed down long before you arrived. Parents wrote the opening lines. Teachers, culture, and circumstance added chapters. Even strangers shaped the dialogue. Your life feels like yours, but it may be nothing more than a borrowed script, rehearsed endlessly by others before you. Think of the words you speak most often. Greetings, apologies, compliments, expressions of love or anger. They are phrases you learned, not created. You repeat them because they fit the moment, because they are available in the script. You call them your words, but they are recycled, borrowed from centuries of use. You are less a poet inventing lines than an actor delivering what has been written. Even your beliefs carry this borrowed quality. The values you defend, the morals you uphold, the truths you cling to, most were taught to you, passed down like lines in a play. You did not choose your language of right and wrong. It was given. You may have revised it, improvised here and there, but the structure remains borrowed. To believe otherwise is to mistake performance for authorship. Pause and think about the rituals you follow. Birthdays, weddings, holidays, even funerals, all are scripts you step into. You wear the clothes expected, say the words required, perform the gestures rehearsed by countless generations. These rituals feel personal, but they are collective, inherited. You live them not because you invented them, but because they were written long before you. Psychology speaks of social scripts, unwritten rules that govern behavior. You know how to act in a restaurant, how to greet a stranger, how to respond to an insult. These patterns unfold automatically, borrowed from cultural rehearsal. You rarely question them because they feel natural. Yet what you call natural is simply scripted. Even identity itself is scripted. You are told who you are by others. Child, sibling, student, worker, citizen. You step into these roles, sometimes resisting, sometimes embracing, but always within the framework. Like an actor, handed multiple parts. You switch masks as needed. Authenticity, then, is not the absence of script, but the awareness of it. To be authentic is to know you are performing, and to choose how you deliver the borrowed lines. The paradox is this. The script you borrow gives your life shape, yet it also imprisons you. Without it, you would not know how to speak or act. With it, you may never touch what lies beyond performance. You are trapped between dependence and rebellion, between needing the script and longing to escape it. But perhaps escape is not possible. Perhaps life is always performance, and freedom lies not in erasing the script, but in rewriting its delivery. Consider memory again. When you tell a story about your past, you borrow language from cultural scripts of storytelling. You arrange events with beginnings, middles, and ends, even though life does not unfold so neatly. You emphasize certain details, omit others, shaping the memory to fit a narrative style learned from movies, books, or family tales. Even your past is performed with borrowed lines. Think also of dreams. In them, characters speak words you did not write, yet they sound like yours. Scenarios unfold, with logic borrowed from waking life, but twisted. Dreams reveal how deeply the script runs. Even unconscious, your mind replays the fragments it has inherited. The dream self, like the waking self, lives on borrowed script. Imagine a stage play performed again and again across centuries. New actors step in, new costumes appear, but the lines remain. You are one such actor, believing your performance unique, forgetting how many have spoken the same words before. The audience applauds as if it were fresh, but the script is older than memory. You are both participant and replacement in an endless cycle of borrowed performance. And yet, there is power in recognizing this. If you are living a borrowed script, then perhaps you can play with it. Perhaps you can deliver the lines differently, alter the tone, improvise in the margins. Perhaps the awareness that you did not write the story frees you from clinging to it too tightly. You can honor the script while knowing it is not essence, only performance. Pause here. Think of one part of your life where the script feels heavy. Perhaps it is a role you no longer wish to play, a set of lines that feel false on your tongue. What if you changed the delivery? What if you let silence replace certain words, or laughter undermine them, or tenderness soften them? The script may remain, but you do not have to repeat it as it was given. So tonight, as you drift, imagine the stage of your life. See the curtains, the lights, the audience. Feel the script in your hands, heavy with borrowed lines. And then, imagine yourself stepping onto the stage, not as a prisoner of the script, but as an actor aware. You know the words were written beforehand, but you deliver them with presence, with awareness, with freedom in the performance. For perhaps the truth is this: you were never meant to write your life from scratch. You were meant to live on borrowed script, and in doing so discover the space between the lines. You carry the assumption that consciousness is stable, that there is a continuous you awake inside, observing the world from one unbroken perspective. But if you look more closely, you notice something strange. Consciousness flickers. It shifts in clarity, depth, focus, and presence. Sometimes you are alert, sometimes lost in thought, sometimes absent entirely. Consciousness is not fixed. It is fluid, unstable, fragile, and yet you cling to it as if it were the solid anchor of your being. Think about ordinary moments. You are driving, and suddenly realize you cannot recall the last 10 minutes of the road. You were conscious enough to act, but not present enough to remember. Or consider when you lose yourself in a book, or a film, or a conversation. The sense of I fades, replaced by immersion. Consciousness narrows or expands depending on the situation. It is not one fixed state, but many shifting ones. Even sleep reveals this instability. 1/3 of your life passes with consciousness altered or absent. In dreams, consciousness reshapes itself, creating stories, identities, and emotions that dissolve upon waking. In deep sleep, consciousness disappears entirely, only to return hours later, as if nothing happened. If consciousness were fixed, how could it vanish so easily? Neurology deepens the mystery. Under anesthesia, consciousness can be switched off, leaving the body alive, but the self gone. In meditation, consciousness can become vast and open, or dissolve entirely into silence. In trauma, it can fragment, leaving gaps and distortions. These shifts reveal that consciousness is not a permanent flame but a wavering light, vulnerable to countless influences. Pause here and recall the last time you lost track of time. Perhaps hours slipped by while scrolling, or minutes dragged while waiting. Consciousness bends time itself, stretching or compressing it. The experience of being present does not move evenly. It wavers, collapses, expands. The instability of time perception is proof that consciousness is not a steady lens but a shifting kaleidoscope. Philosophers have long debated this. Descartes believed consciousness was the indubitable foundation, I think, therefore I am. But Buddhism counters thought is not continuous, nor is the self it implies. Consciousness arises and passes moment by moment, empty of permanence. Modern science leans closer to the latter, describing consciousness as an emergent property of complex systems, something that appears under certain conditions and fades when those conditions collapse. The paradox is sharp. You rely on consciousness to define your identity, yet it is the least reliable aspect of you. It disappears every night. It alters under stress. It can be fragmented by illness, expanded by drugs, silenced by meditation. What you think of as a fixed self is a flickering awareness, unstable and shifting. And yet, the illusion of stability persists. You string together moments of awareness, ignoring the gaps, the shifts, the absences. You tell yourself, I am continuous, when in truth you are a patchwork of changing states. The illusion is necessary. Without it, you might dissolve into confusion, but beneath the illusion lies instability too vast to ignore. Imagine a candle flame. From a distance it looks steady, but up close you see it flicker, bend, flare, collapse. Consciousness is the same, appearing solid when observed broadly, but unstable when examined closely. And just as the flame depends on fuel, wick, and air, consciousness depends on countless conditions: brain function, sensory input, attention. Remove the conditions, and the flame goes out. Consider also how identity depends on this unstable flame. You call yourself me because consciousness persists long enough to create the illusion of continuity. But if consciousness shifts constantly, then so too does me. The self you believe in is not fixed because the awareness that perceives it is not fixed. You are built upon shifting ground. This realization can be unsettling. If consciousness is not stable, who are you really? If awareness can vanish and return, what guarantees that the you who wakes tomorrow is the same as the one listening now? Perhaps none. Perhaps each moment of consciousness is a new self, linked by memory but not by essence. Continuity may be nothing more than a story consciousness tells about itself before it slips away again. And yet, instability can also bring freedom. If consciousness is not fixed, then it is not limited either. It can expand, deepen, transform. You are not bound to one narrow perspective. You can shift, dissolve, open. You are not trapped inside a single state. You are fluid, like water taking the shape of every vessel it enters. So tonight, as you listen, notice your awareness. Notice how it drifts, how it sharpens, how it blurs. Notice that you cannot hold it steady no matter how you try. It flickers, rises, falls, and perhaps that is the truth you were never meant to escape. Consciousness is not fixed. It was never meant to be. You were always meant to live within its shifting, its disappearing, its returning, an unstable light in the dark, burning just long enough for you to call it you. You tell yourself that identity is singular, that there is one coherent I who thinks, feels, acts, and remembers. But if you observe more closely, you notice fractures. Different versions of you emerge in different contexts, each claiming to be the real one. At times you feel strong, at other times fragile, sometimes kind, sometimes cruel, sometimes wise, sometimes reckless. Identity is not one thread, but many splitting strands, weaving and unweaving in constant motion. You do not live as one, you live as many. Think about how you shift in different roles. At work, you may project professionalism, while with friends you relax into humor. With family, you revert to old patterns, while alone you may feel like someone else entirely. Each role feels authentic in its moment, yet none of them are stable. The self splits again and again, adapting to circumstance. Which of these is the real you, or is the truth that no single identity endures? Psychologists describe this through the concept of multiple selves. You carry different self-concepts, activated, depending on the situation. This explains why you sometimes surprise yourself with actions or words you never expected. A different self stepped forward, one you did not know was waiting. Identity splits like light through a prism, revealing countless hidden colors. You mistake the rainbow for a single beam, forgetting how easily it fractures. Pause here and think of a decision you made that felt unlike you. Maybe you acted impulsively when you normally act with caution. Maybe you forgave when you thought you would hold a grudge. In that moment, another self emerged, claiming authorship. You later explain it to yourself, stitching it into your story. But the truth is that identity split, briefly, before rejoining. The self is not unified. It is a constant splitting and merging. Even memory contributes to this fracturing. You look back and say, I was a different person then. And in a sense, you are right. The teenager who believed differently, the child who dreamed differently, the adult who acted differently, all are selves that split off, lived, and dissolved. You inherit their memories, but you are not them. Each identity slips away, replaced by another, even as you weave them into one continuous illusion. Culture amplifies this. You are given labels, citizen, worker, parent, student, and each becomes a separate identity. You split yourself across these roles, performing differently in each. Some days you feel like one, other days another. Rarely do they align perfectly. Instead, you juggle them, switching masks, carrying the tension of splitting selves. You may feel whole, but beneath the surface you are divided. Philosophers have long suggested this multiplicity. Nietzsche wrote of the self as a social structure of drives and effects, not one being but a community. Jung spoke of archetypes, the hero, the shadow, the child, living within each person, emerging in different moments. Modern neuroscience echoes this. The brain itself is not one commander but a network of competing systems, each influencing behavior. Identity is not one voice but many, overlapping, contradicting, splitting endlessly. Imagine a cracked mirror. Each shard reflects you but differently. Some show your eyes, others your mouth, others fragments distorted by angle. Put together, they approximate a whole, but none is exact. That is identity, a broken mirror held together by belief. You insist on wholeness, but beneath the insistence lies fracture. You are the sum of many faces, never one complete reflection. This splitting can be painful. You may feel inauthentic, as though you are pretending. You may long for one stable self, one voice that endures. But perhaps the splitting is not failure. It is the nature of being human. To adapt is to split, to grow is to divide, to live is to fracture again and again, creating space for new selves to emerge. And yet, the paradox deepens. If identity keeps splitting, then who is the one noticing the splits? Who is the witness behind the fragments? Perhaps there is no permanent observer, only awareness itself, empty of identity, or perhaps the observer is another mask, another self pretending to be whole. Either way, the search for unity dissolves into silence. Pause now and think of the selves you carry, the confident one, the fearful one, the creative one, the tired one. Notice how they overlap and separate, how they emerge and dissolve. They do not betray your authenticity. They are your authenticity. You are not one identity pretending to be many. You are many pretending to be one. So tonight, as you drift, imagine yourself as light through a prism. See the single beam split into colors, each vivid, each temporary. Watch as they fade, merge, split again. That is you identity that keeps splitting, endlessly, without final unity. You were never meant to be one self. You were always meant to fracture, to divide, to shimmer with multiplicity before dissolving back into silence. You think of dreams as something you have, fleeting images and stories your mind creates while you sleep. But what if the truth is reversed? What if dreams are not yours at all, but forces that live you? Night after night, they take hold, carrying you into roles, landscapes, emotions that you never chose. You surrender to them completely, immersed in their logic, only to wake and call them mine. But perhaps they were never your creations. Perhaps you were their creation. Think of how powerless you are in dreams. You cannot control where they begin, who appears, what unfolds. You may run, fly, weep, or fight, all without consent. Even when you realize you are dreaming, lucidity offers little control. The dream world resists, bending your attempts back into its rhythm. The dream is not a stage you command. It is a current that sweeps you. Consider also the characters who appear, faces of loved ones, strangers, archetypes. They arrive unbidden, speak lines you never wrote, act in ways you never predicted, yet you experience them as real. Their voices feel external, their presence undeniable. If your mind is the author, why do you experience them as others? Perhaps because you are not the author. Perhaps the dream is alive, living through you as much as you live through it. Pause for a moment and recall a dream that stayed with you. Maybe it was strange, unsettling, or profoundly moving. Ask yourself, did you invent it, or did it happen to you? The vivid landscapes, the emotions that felt deeper than waking life, did you construct them consciously? No, they arrived fully formed, living you, carrying you, dissolving you into their world. Psychology often explains dreams as byproducts, random neural firings, memory consolidation, emotional processing. But even these explanations suggest that dreams are not voluntary. They arise from forces beyond conscious control. They process fears you ignored, desires you repressed, experiences you barely noticed. Dreams live what you cannot face in waking life, bringing it to you in disguised form. They are not possessions. They are processes using you as their stage. Philosophy goes further. Some traditions view waking life itself as dreamlike, shaped by unconscious scripts and illusions. The Buddha taught that clinging to waking experience is like mistaking a dream for truth. Even Descartes questioned whether life might itself be a dream. If so, then the line between dreams you have and dreams that live you blurs. Perhaps all of existence is a dream, and you are simply its passing figure. Imagine standing in a theater, only to realize you are not the playwright, but the actor. The script unfolds, the stage shifts, the characters move, and you perform without rehearsal. That is dreaming. You are not the one dreaming, you are the one being dreamed. This paradox deepens when you consider how dreams bleed into waking. Sometimes you wake unsettled, carrying fear or sadness from a dream into your day. Sometimes inspiration arrives, an idea birthed in dream that shapes waking life. Dreams leave marks, altering choices, emotions, identity. They live you not only while you sleep, but long after you wake. Even memory of dreams reveals their power. Some vanish instantly, leaving only a feeling. Others stay vivid for years, haunting you more than real events. You tell yourself they were just dreams, yet they shape you profoundly. They become part of your story, your sense of self. Something unreal has lived you more deeply than what was real. Pause now, and imagine your nightly surrender. Each evening you close your eyes, trusting the unknown. Hours vanish, and in that time countless selves may rise and fall. Countless worlds may spin and dissolve. You do not witness them all, but they unfold nonetheless. You wake to call it sleep, but it was more. It was existence rewritten by forces you do not control. This realization can be unsettling. If dreams live you, then who are you when awake? How much of your identity is shaped by unconscious processes, by forces beneath awareness? Perhaps more than you admit. The dreams you dismiss as nonsense may be closer to truth than the waking story you cling to. They reveal that selfhood is porous, unstable, and constantly being shaped by forces beyond your control. And yet, there is also beauty in this surrender. If you are lived by dreams, then you are not alone. You are part of a vast process of imagination, creativity, and mystery larger than yourself. You are carried each night into landscapes you could never invent, lived by narratives too strange and too profound for waking logic. Dreams remind you that you are not the sole author of your life. You are the stage upon which existence writes. So tonight, as you drift towards sleep, consider what awaits. Not simply rest, but another surrender. You will hand yourself over to forces unseen, to stories unwritten, to dreams that will live you. They may frighten, comfort, or bewilder. They may dissolve the boundaries of self entirely, and when you wake, you will tell yourself that they were yours. But perhaps the truth is this: you were never meant to own your dreams. You were meant to be owned by them, to dissolve into their currents, to be lived by dreams that were never yours to begin with. You think of yourself as something continuous, stretching from past to future like a single line. You carry the weight of memory, the pressure of expectation, the illusion of permanence. But what if the self is not a line at all? What if it is only a pause, a fleeting moment between what has gone and what has yet to arrive? A pause can feel real, but it cannot last. The self too may be nothing more than a passing pause. Consider how each moment of experience arises. A thought appears, lingers, fades, an emotion surges, peaks, dissolves, a sensation arrives, then vanishes. You are never experiencing continuity, only a series of appearances, yet your mind stitches these fragments together, telling you there is an unbroken self behind them. The stitching is the illusion. In truth, you are a sequence of pauses, each one lasting just long enough to be mistaken for permanence. Pause here and think of breathing. You inhale, you exhale, and for the briefest instant between them, there is silence. That silence feels empty, but it is also a kind of presence. The self works the same way, between thought and thought, between feeling and feeling, between moment and moment. There is a gap. You overlook it, rushing to the next. But the gap is where the self reveals its fragility. You are never a steady flame. You are always the flicker, the pause. Philosophy and meditation traditions have long suggested this. Buddhists speak of the anatta doctrine. No permanent self, only processes arising and ceasing. Neuroscience echoes this, showing how consciousness is built from discrete frames of perception. Like film projected quickly enough to appear seamless, life feels continuous only because the pauses are hidden. If the reel slowed, you would see the gaps. You would see that selfhood is a rhythm, not a substance. Think of memory again. When you recall your past, you believe you are the same person who lived it. But memory is only a pause, a frozen frame stitched into narrative. The child you once were has slipped away. The adult you will be tomorrow has not yet arrived. Between them, there is only now a pause you inhabit briefly, before it too dissolves. The I that claims ownership of past and future is a voice trying to hold together pauses that cannot be held. Even language reveals this truth. You say I am as if it were fixed, but each time you speak, the meaning changes. I am tired. I am hopeful. I am lost. Which I is true? None, because each belongs only to the pause in which it was spoken. By the next pause, you are someone else. The sentence persists, the self does not. Imagine standing at a train station. Trains arrive, pause briefly, then leave. During the pause, they seem still, present, tangible, but the pause is only temporary. A transition between movement and movement. You are like this, arriving for a moment, pausing, then moving on. The pause feels like identity, but it cannot stay. The paradox is that you cling to the pause, trying to stretch it into permanence. You tell yourself stories to connect them, believing the pauses are chapters in one continuous book, but perhaps they are more like musical notes, moments of sound separated by silence. The melody feels whole, only because you do not hear the silence as absence. The pauses are as essential as the notes, but they reveal the truth. No single note defines the song, and no single pause defines the self. This realization can feel unsettling. If the self is only a passing pause, then where is continuity? Where is stability? But perhaps you do not need them. Perhaps the beauty of being lies precisely in its transience. A pause is precious because it cannot last. Each moment of self is unique, arising once and never again. To see this is not to despair. It is to awaken to the fragile miracle of existence. And yet, awareness of impermanence can bring freedom too. If you are only a pause, then you are not condemned to carry every mistake, every regret, every pain. They belong to selves that have already slipped away. You are not their prisoner. Each pause dissolves, making space for another. You are always being rewritten, always beginning again. So tonight, as you drift into quiet, notice the pauses, the space between your breaths, the silence between your thoughts, the stillness between heartbeats. In those spaces, the illusion of continuity falls away. What remains is the truth. You are not an unbroken self, but a passing pause, endlessly arising and dissolving. You were never meant to last forever. You were meant to flicker, moment by moment, into the infinite silence that surrounds you. There is a silence that follows your name. Each time it is spoken, each time it is written, there is a gap before and after, a stillness where the sound does not exist. Your name feels permanent, like an anchor of identity, yet it is always surrounded by silence. And if you listen closely, that silence may reveal more than the sound itself. For your name, powerful as it seems, is temporary. It arises, it fades, and in between, silence holds it. Think about how you respond when your name is called. In a crowded room, among countless voices, your name cuts through. It summons you, makes you turn your head, stirs recognition. And yet, the power lies not in the sound alone, but in the silence that follows, the moment of stillness where you recognize, that is me. Without the pause, the name would be noise. The silence gives it meaning. Even memory works this way. When you recall being called by your name as a child, you remember the tone, the urgency, the affection or anger behind it. But more than that, you remember the pause, the moment when you realized you were the one being summoned. The silence held your name, made it yours, gave it weight. The sound is gone, but the stillness remains, echoing through you. Pause here and reflect on how names shift in meaning. A friend speaks it warmly, and it feels like home. A stranger calls it formally, and it feels distant. A lover whispers it, and it carries intimacy. The same syllables, but each rests in a different silence. The silence frames the sound, shaping its meaning. Your name is never fixed. It lives and dies in the spaces that surround it. Philosophers and poets have long noticed this paradox. Some argued that silence is not absence but presence, the ground upon which all sound exists. Without silence, words would collapse into chaos. Your name, too, is not substance on its own. It is a flicker within silence, borrowed briefly before dissolving back. The silence is eternal. The name is temporary. Consider also how your name ends when you do. One day, it will no longer be spoken by living voices. Perhaps it will linger in records, carved in stone, or written in memory. But even then, it will be silence holding it. A gravestone bears a name, but what surrounds it? Quiet, absence, stillness. The silence outlives the sound, as it always has. Even now, silence reshapes your identity. When no one speaks your name, when you are alone, who are you? Without the sound to summon you, the self feels diffuse, uncertain. You may whisper your name to anchor yourself, to feel real, but in the vast stretches of silence, the name fades, the self dissolves, and you realize how fragile your identity is, dependent on syllables, dependent on sound. Imagine standing in a vast desert at night. The stars burn overhead, the wind moves softly, and you whisper your name into the emptiness. For a moment, it feels profound, but soon, the echo fades. Silence swallows the word, leaving only space. That is the truth of identity. Your name rises, falls, and silence holds it, indifferent. And yet, there is also freedom here. If silence holds your name, then silence also holds every possible name, every possible identity. You are not bound to one. You can change, shift, reinvent, because silence remains constant beneath them all. The self is not the sound of your name, it is the space that surrounds it. The paradox is this. You cling to your name as if it were eternal, yet it only exists because silence allows it. You believe your name defines you, yet it is only a ripple in stillness. The silence before you were born held no name. The silence after you die will hold no name. And yet, Both silences are vast, infinite, unbroken. The name was only ever a brief interruption. So tonight, as you drift into quiet, hear your name in your mind. Speak it silently, then let it fade. Notice the stillness that follows. That silence is larger than the name, larger than identity, larger than the story of you. Perhaps that is the truth. You were never meant to be the sound alone. You were always meant to be the silence holding your name. Between every breath, between every blink, between every thought you think is yours, there is a pause, a silent intermission, a space where something ends and something else begins. You rarely notice it. You live in motion, in constant narration, in the flicker of identities you call you. But what if the real you, if such a thing exists, was not in the thoughts, not in the emotions, not even in the body, but in the pause between all those illusions? This pause is not absence. It is not blankness. It is not void. It is stillness. A kind of pregnant, hidden awareness that exists just before the next illusion takes hold, before the next story of who you are settles in. The illusion of being the child, the illusion of being the adult, the illusion of being a thinker, a feeler, a name, a memory, a person. You see, identity has never been one long, unbroken line. It has always been made of cuts, jump cuts between moments, edits, blinks, skips, a flicker of the child, then a blank, a flicker of the teenager, then a jump. The adult appears, stitched together from fragments that never quite connect. You remember continuity because memory is the strongest illusion of all. But in truth, your entire life is made of pauses between illusions. Think of how you wake up. For just 1 second, there's no you yet. There's no name, no story, no location, just sensation, just presence. A pause. Then the illusion loads. You remember who you are, where you are, what hurts, what matters. But that first moment, that breath before the self returns, that is the pause between illusions, and you pass through it every day. And still, you never look at it. Never pause inside the pause. Philosophers of consciousness, Buddhist, Advaita, phenomenological, cognitive, have long tried to name this space. Some call it pure awareness. Others call it anatta, or no self. Others say it is simply the failure of the brain to maintain continuous narration. But all seem to agree in that pause, the illusion of you is momentarily suspended. Something quieter looks through your eyes. Something outside of the story. What if that something is the only constant? The only you that's real? Let's go deeper. Remember a moment of crisis. A breakup, a loss. A moment where your identity was shaken. You said things like, "I don't know who I am anymore." But the truth is, you never did. You only borrowed roles, faces, masks. The illusion cracked. The story paused. And in that pause, you glimpsed something terrifying, but also liberating. You were not what you thought. You were not what they called you. You were not even what you remembered. You were something watching it all, quietly, silently, without comment. Now think about dreams. You shift between characters without questioning. You cry in one scene, fly in the next. The illusion changes rapidly, but between each dream, there is a gap, a pause, a darkness. You don't fear that pause. In fact, you rarely remember it. But what if your waking life is no different? What if the pause between illusions is happening constantly, and you've just been trained not to notice? This theory says, you were never meant to be you. At least, not in the way you think of yourself. That version of you, the thinker, the doer, the name, the story, is the illusion. The truth lives in the space between, not the character, but the silence between characters. Not the dream, but the moment before the dream begins. Not the mirror, but the invisible glass holding all reflections. And here's the trap. The moment you try to be the pause, you've already fallen back into illusion, because trying requires a doer, a self, a thought. The pause cannot be held. It can only be noticed, briefly, and then let go. This is why many traditions say the self must die before you can truly awaken, but they don't mean physical death. They mean ego death, the death of the story, the surrender of all masks. The realization that nothing you believe about yourself is absolutely true. Not your name, not your memories, not your preferences, not even your emotions. All of it is changing. All of it is illusion. The only thing that remains is the pause between them. So what do you do with this knowledge? You don't step rush to find the next identity. You don't step panic. You don't step dissolve. You simply sit in the stillness and notice, that story ended. Another will come. But for now, I am the pause. That awareness alone is powerful, because if you can rest in the pause, you are no longer caught in the illusion. You are no longer dragged by every emotion, every label, every memory. You become the space between them. Untouchable, still, clear, free. And isn't it that what you always longed for? You thought you were searching for a stronger self, a truer self, but maybe you were just searching for silence, for stillness, for freedom from the story. Maybe the most authentic version of you is the one who doesn't need to exist as someone. Maybe you are already home, each time you enter the pause between illusions. So tonight, as your thoughts begin to slow, notice the spaces between them. As each image fades, watch the dark quiet that follows. That is you too, maybe more you than anything else ever was. Stay there. Linger. Don't rush back into the story. You were never meant to be you. You were always meant to be the space that holds all the versions you thought you had to be. And in that realization, you are finally free. After walking through 30 shadows, 30 mirrors, 30 dissolving selves, you arrive not at an answer, but at a stillness, a quiet knowing. Not of who you are, but of who you are not. So now, here you are. You are not the child they raised. You are not your memories, because even they change shape. You are not the echoes of past pain, nor the fleeting triumphs you clung to. You are not the name they gave you. You are not your thoughts, because they arrive uninvited. All along, you believed in a you that had to be found, constructed, strengthened. But what if every time you tried to define yourself, you moved further from what was real? What if the self isn't a structure to be built, but a story to be seen through? You are not your choices, because they often choose you. You were told to be somebody, but never once did they teach you to question why. You were taught to be someone. You walked into the cracks between identities. You stared at the maskless space behind your reflection. You noticed the flickering light behind your thoughts. And maybe, just for a breath, you felt it, the strange weightlessness of being no one in particular, the freedom of not having to perform. Tonight, you did. There is a deep paradox in all this. One you now know intimately. The more you chase the self, the more it slips away. The more you define, the more you distort. The more you let go, the closer you get. And in that dissolution, something remarkable begins. You start to see, the more you observe, the more you dissolve. It changed with every gaze you met. You see that identity was never fixed. It shifted with every room you entered. You weren't just one person. You were many, layered, recursive, contradictory, and between each version, there was a moment of pause, a flicker, a death and rebirth, a breath that nobody noticed. Until now. It rewrote itself with every silence you survived. This is not about giving up. It's about waking up. Waking up to the idea that you were never meant to play one role forever, that you were never just the thinker, or the achiever, or the anxious mind watching its own panic spiral. You were not meant to be the mask. You were meant to be the mirror behind it. Now you notice the pause between illusions. You feel it resting behind every sentence, hiding beneath every choice. That pause is not a failure of identity. It is the doorway to your truest self, or rather to the absence of self that reveals something deeper, a presence that does not need to be someone in order to exist. Rest from the pressure to know who you are. So let this theory be your lullaby, not because it comforts, but because it loosens. Let it unfasten the identity you've held too tightly. Let it dissolve the need to constantly be someone. You are allowed to rest now, not just your body, but your story. And sometimes, even the mirror must disappear. Rest from the timeline you were supposed to follow. Rest from the illusion that you must be consistent. Rest from the past that insists on defining you. Rest from the future you've been trying to control. And somehow, you are all of it. You are none of it. And more importantly, you are what remains when all of it fades. That pause. That stillness. That space behind the dream. You were never meant to be you. You were meant to witness the becoming and unbecoming. To feel the veil lift, moment by moment. To drift gently into sleep, not as the character, but as the screen on which the character fades. You don't need to answer it tonight. And now, as you lay here, in the quiet, perhaps the silence feels softer, perhaps the breath between thoughts feels wider, perhaps the question, "Who am I?" no longer feels like a puzzle to solve, but a doorway into peace. Just feel the truth echoing softly beneath it. And in that pause, you are finally free. You are the pause between illusions. Sleep well, wanderer of self. We'll meet again in the space behind the next illusion.